The angry redhead rushes in with the other two close behind her, and who do they find waiting but our main dude? The hero is surprised to see him and asks why he's here. Elvira can see the traces of the students that stormed through, and the entire place is a mess. Ed sits silently with his back to the stairs. She did not expect that he of all people would try to stop them. He confirms her guess and says that he cannot let them pass, like he's Gandalf. Elvira laughs, knowing he can't beat them alone since the people on her side are very skilled. Taylor, on the other hand, cannot understand why our dude would stand against them, and demands to know what is happening. As he gives no response, the hero charges at our dude. Ed of course blocks him with magic, and Elvira identifies it as the basic spell Wind Blade. However, the spell has now become so advanced thanks to his continuous use of it, that it does a lot of damage. The students at Opheles panic. Well, Clebius panics, wondering what is going on. Elvira, Taylor, and Ayla fell from surprise at the attack, and Elvira realized with horror that he cut her hair. She realizes he's going to be serious about this fight and reaches for her potions, but Ed sets the place on fire with ignition. The battlefield was set, so his judgment was quick and precise. Meanwhile, Elvira thinks to herself that Ed is showing talent far beyond just high mage proficiency. As the alchemy faculty's top student, Elvira represents their main forces. However, the biggest flaw of alchemy is that, without relying on magic tools or elixirs, their raw combat power is close to zero. Most alchemy students carry a magic ring or necklace with them. But Elvira had never thought a genius like her would need that kind of thing. Rookie mistake, because it seems Ed knew that as well. He dropped the chandelier and used the opening to cast Firewall, just to separate Elvira from her bag. However, she wonders why he went for the strap instead of destroying her bag and its precious contents. She is not out of options yet, and she cast a fire-resistant formula, amplified its strength, and made it go berserk. Meanwhile, Ayla hurriedly sought out a spell to put out the fire. Overwhelmed by the flames, she screams and Taylor yells at her to get her act together. She is usually confident in her magic, but her combat ability is average at best. Ed keeps targeting her, which makes it hard for the hero to leave her side and get close to him. Elvira, however, is ready to make an opening for the hero to have a shot at knocking down our guy. Her berserk fire-resistant bunny launches at our dude, and the hero follows behind, determined to put a stop to Ed. The alchemist redhead loves Taylor's energy, and wraps herself in a cloth, launching into the fire to Ayla's shock. She manages to get to her bag of potions. It's game on now. Ed throws Wind Blade at her, but she flings at him a chemical reagent prepared by dicing up unique flowers and mushrooms. This chemical works by controlling the release of magic and temporarily subduing the products that result from magic formulas. Our dude successfully takes down the Berserker Bunny, but the hero uses the chance to race at Ed. However, our dude suddenly turns tail and runs. He brings down a huge table between them and sets it on fire. Elvira is horrified, screaming that a fire would surely kill all the students trapped in there. However, the hero is sure he can slash through any fire created by magic with his elemental slash. They need to make haste while Elvira's chemical reagent is in action. Taylor rushes at Ed, even as Elvira shouts for him to wait. The windows are open wide enough for all the smoke to escape, and even the carpet that could catch fire is not there. There are no flammable objects in sight, which means it is a trap. Ed notches a bow and prepares to fire. The hero did not expect our guy to have a weapon, but he could easily deflect the shot anyway. However, to the hero's horror, Ed fires at Ayla. Ayla can't even use basic spells right now. However, the alchemy redhead saves Ayla, using Claw Hand, and stops the arrow before it hits her. Elvira is surprised to see the arrowhead is covered with cloth, so Ed did not even plan on hurting her. Taylor charges in, ignoring Elvira's warnings. Ed is waiting for something. Clebius has started to panic inside of his room, as the Act 2 of the final chapter of the Opheles Hall incident kicks into gear. Clebius escapes his room, and our guy can finally relax. The hero takes the opportunity to knock him into next week. Elvira is absolutely shocked to see Ed go flying. Taylor yells at the defeated Ed, asking why he dared to go so far. Even the redhead is pissed because she feels like he was just playing with them the whole time. Everything he did proves that he was not fighting them seriously. He tells them that if they're done, they can go upstairs and get busy. Elvira asks our dude why he let them win, which confuses Taylor and Ayla. She is very enraged that he toyed with them. Unfortunately, right at this moment, Janica emerges from her room after picking out a flower pin. Her pure love might be naive and delusional, but she is free to imagine happy thoughts if she so desires. However, the difference between imagination and reality can be cruel at times. The boy she thought would be at the pavilion all dressed up was on the ground, covered in blood, after being attacked by a suspicious group of people. There was no way our ever-sweet spirit sorcerer was going to take that kindly, and Janica's eyes flamed red. Janica would admit that it would be lying if she said something did not feel out of place. Ed could have gotten swept into some unexpected situation. Despite her concern, based on his simple life and the way he'd acted during the Glasgow incident, she felt certain that he would figure out the problem somehow. It was not until the flaw in such a complacent way of thinking was poked that she started to reflect on it. She had offered to help if he was in trouble, but Ed had not asked for help. The reason he lured her outside Opheles Hall, even going so far as to write her a letter, which was unlike himself. It was the same reason he fought alone till he was covered with blood, to keep Janica outside of the battlefield since she had already received several punishments because of the Glaskin incident. She doesn't entirely know what happened, but he was so considerate to ensure that she would not get swept up in all this. While she was busy worrying about her looks, Ed fought alone. Meanwhile, Taylor is happy to see her, oblivious to her rage. He tells her all about how Ed tried to stop them from going upstairs. Too late. Elvira tries to warn him that Janica has appeared as a foe instead of a friend. She doesn't really care about what's going on, but she won't forgive them for hurting her crush. Our guy tries to stop her, shouting her name. However, Janica summons all the spirits and tells him to wait because she's going to handle this. She's summoned intermediate grade spirits of the 4 elements and others that basically make up a battalion. Elvira quickly tries to get Taylor and the others to run since there is no way they can defeat the top student among the second years of the whole faculty of magic. They were already barely winning against our dude. Taylor already knew they would not beat the overpowered spirit sorcerer, and he also knew this takeover was not normal based on how Ed had been acting. However, the spirit of the hero burned within him. He could not back down because students could get hurt. He reminded Elvira that they had to secure her herbs and stood his ground like a hero. Our guy was impressed, but also hauled the hero by his collar and tossed him aside. He promised the hero that he would take care of his girl, so that Taylor could go to the 2nd floor. They can't believe he's letting them go after he tried to stop them. But he just yells that he changed his mind and tells them to hurry up. Redhead can't believe that he can stop the spirits alone, but Ed insists that they get moving, and apologizes for tearing her back. They are confused, but they finally listen and get going. Janica approaches, her eyes glowing red. She pauses when she sees Ed and tells him that she will handle the rest without him having to explain anything. However, he gently places his hands on her shoulder and reassures her that he is fine. Janica gets knocked out of the rage mood by the power of Crush, her face flushing because our guy is touching her. He tells her to please send the spirits away, as the wind is so strong that he can barely hold on. The spirits feel underwhelmed as they are quickly sent away. To the heroic trio's shock, he actually managed to single-handedly stop her. He gestures for them to hurry and go, as there's probably not much time left. Exhausted, Ed collapses. Janica scolds him as she helps him, asking him why he keeps getting hurt, and why he did not ask her for help. He assures her that he'll ask for her aid in the right situation. She thinks the trio is excessive in beating him up, and she will get really angry with them the next time they meet. She asks him to promise to stop getting hurt, and he thanks her for worrying. The plan went a little astray, but he did his job as the 1st floor boss, and now he can rest assured and focus on his camp. However, just as he's about to relax, Janica informs him of the huge golden carriage she saw by the rose garden. The carriage shaped like a golden crown is the symbol of the Elite Merchant Association. Lortel's adoptive father, and the one who killed her biological father, the fake boss, will eventually disappear after losing to her. In the struggle of the 2nd act's last episode, Sage sealed Grimoire the Golden King Elite. More importantly, the fact that he came to the academy earlier than expected means something else is going on outside the scope of Ed's knowledge. The rains come down heavily, and Lortel informs Alice that she was dumped by our guy. While they are on the 5th corridor of Ophely's Hall, Alice mentions that she had not realized that he was Foxy's type. Foxy admits that his looks are not all that bad, but she thought he'd be able to sympathize with her. However, he had dumped her without mercy. She adds that people like them get used to hearing that all their lives. Alice was the chief maid of Ophely's Hall, a senior maid who had worked there for over 20 years. She started from nothing as an apprentice maid at the age of 15 and eventually proved herself by becoming the Ophely's Hall manager. Lortel had invested in Alice, spending the most trying to bend Alice out of her uprightness. The losses from that had burnt a hole in the financial ledgers. However, Lortel considered it a worthy investment, because she had finally found someone like her, someone who would abandon their rigid values for gold. Lortel had lived a life in the slums, stabbing first so that she did not get stabbed. Willie and the inferior students rep would take over the 4th floor's control room, and they would hand him command over the Berserk defense magic at the right time. This would destroy the whole Ophely's Hall from the inside without anyone knowing anything. Regardless of the unfortunate past, or the sad story that pushed her into this predicament, Lortel is clearly an evil character, a hidden villain. Since everything is going according to plan, she will head to the storage room to put on the act of innocence and fear. She is a poor pitiful human, unaware that a person that can be bought by her can be bought by others too. Lortel has never loved someone or had someone she considered family, so she'll be alone even in death, as Alice informs her that she is not exactly her kind. She freezes as Alice holds a sword to her neck. It doesn't take long for Taylor and his friends to make progress. They clear the 2nd floor boss, overpowering Clebius and forcing him to join their party. Then, they stop the maid and 3rd floor boss, bedding washer Kelly. She was no match for them without her older twin sister. Everything was going unexpectedly smoothly and they finally reached the Ophely's Hall 4th floor. Only the 1st floor had been a real challenge. They get to the 4th floor just in time to see Willian go berserk. He had become hostage to the defense magic, placing the crystal ball that triggers the magic circle control system in the control room's dead center for everyone to see was Alice and Lortel's scheme. The self-defense magic formulas carved all over the building were installed to protect students from invaders. However, in Willane's hands, it was like a child holding a loaded gun. Taylor, Alvira, and Ayla helped the fleeing students to evacuate. The students inside their rooms panicked at the quake this caused, thinking the building was about to collapse. They used their powers to escape the building in their own ways. The whole situation slowly became a catastrophe. Alvira uses anglerweed reagent as a quick rebound and hopes that it will at least block all basic magic within this corridor. It is only assisting magic, and it might be a lot, but the hero can handle its force. So, she tells them to leave this to her, flinging Clebius and telling him and Taylor to knock poor Willane out. Willane is trapped by the runes and shooting magic at them. They dodge the magic and rush at the crying boy, who is relieved that someone has come to save him. A part of the top floor explodes and the rain keeps coming down. Meanwhile, Janica and Ed are still nearby, taking a little stroll outside. Janica tells him not to push himself too hard or the wounds will open again. He explains most of the stains on him aren't his blood anyway. Instead, his focus is on the crown golden carriage that looks rather plain. Despite the prestigious outer appearance, considering the man inside, the horse carriage looks plain. The Golden King, Elte. Ordinarily, he'd be escorted by a grand fleet of over a dozen carriages, but his discreet approach hints at secret motives. Elte is Lortel's adoptive father and is also the fake boss who later gets backstabbed by her and exits the stage. He's a figure that should not be at the academy right now. It looks like the carriage has been there for a while, so our dude cannot fathom why he is not getting out. He wonders if the Golden King is waiting for the Opheles Hall to be wrecked. Suddenly, Ed recognizes the third floor maid in charge of dishes, Shenny. She is one of the orphans raised by Alice. Alice was originally bought off by Lortel and Shenny was supposed to be the third floor boss with her sister, Kelly. However, she is with Elte, who is Lortel's enemy, and that is going far off script. There's no way Shenny would betray Alice, and Lortel bought Alice off, which can only mean that Shenny is with Elte because the head maid has double-timed Foxy. After all, money knows no loyalty. This could mean Lortel's downfall. Lortel is the one who gets into a political fight with Fionia in Act 3, as well as the main character's biggest ally in the fight against the Roth-Taylor family in Act 4. Ed already had such an annoying hard time taking Toad's place as the middle boss, he can't play her role as well, but that will happen if she meets her downfall. With a heavy sigh, Ed asks Janica for a favor. She agrees to help in any way that he needs, no questions asked. Elte Kachellan, the Golden King and honorable president of the Elte Merchantry. Lortel appears to others like she is following his orders since he is her adopted father. However, she is in fact plotting to betray him and take over the Elte merchants. She knows all about how he killed her biological parents, and coaxed the business magnates and directors of the Elte Merchantry to oust him. Also, the negotiations to purchase the Sage-sealed grimoire were just an excuse to draw him out into the Sylvania Academy, and a bait to take him by surprise so that he can't react in time to the crisis back at the Elte Merchantry's headquarters. Certain factors led to him finding out about this betrayal, and now he has received a letter from someone who holds the confidential document that can prove Lortel's plot. That someone is Alice. Lady Lortel offered her a huge amount of gold coins. Unless she is offered more gold than that, she will side with her. She's lost her sight and most of her hearing due to an accident. This will be her last year as the chief maid. She is in a predicament, and the only human who knows the truth about the Fox Lady. Depending on her choice, things will change dramatically for the better or worse. The paper attached to the letter she sent has the names of the institutions that she has been secretly managing all this time. The amount of gold coins delivered to these institutions will determine her actions. She trusts the Golden King to make the correct judgment. Alice tells Lortel not to dare move as her father will arrive at Opheles Hall soon. She didn't expect her to suddenly look shocked and sad since she thought she was more level-headed. Lortel had wanted revenge against the Golden King, but in Alice's eyes, they were both the same, just like her. Suddenly, an explosion knocks down the wall. Taylor's group shows up, dragging the fallen body of Willane. Alvira already suspected that there was no way someone like Willane could have gotten close to defense magic, so the real culprit behind this entire showdown had to be Alice, the chief maid. They believe she is holding poor Lortel hostage. Foxy uses the distraction to run to her friends, who are also the suckers who just saved her lying cheating ass. They quickly ask if she is alright, and the girl considers lying. She could frame Alice for the whole thing and everyone would believe her. However, she could not bring herself to say anything. So instead, Foxy makes an expression that shocks Elvira and covers her face to run away from the whole commotion. At the same time, Golden King Elte is coming into the scene. That man doesn't trust even his own henchmen, so he came all the way just to finish things himself. The plan to overthrow him is nearly complete, and he is supposed to take the fall for large-scale tampering with the account books, and the damages caused. Fortunately, he is not at the headquarters yet, so she just needs to get in touch with the officials there. She needs to send the carrier pigeon hidden in her room and hide herself somewhere. As long as she, the center of the plan, does not get captured, everything will be okay. Her pace slows as she tries to cheer herself up. No one in the world understands her, and she always expects betrayal. She has gone through it countless times, so getting her heart broken doesn't mean anything. However, Lortel is unable to hold back the rivers of tears that fall from her eyes. Crying doesn't suit her, so she keeps walking. She has to do what she can right now, so she runs. She has to get to her room before Elte does. Everything will be fine as soon as she sends the carrier pigeon. At the same time, on the first floor, the man of the hour appears in the wrecked main hall. He spots a student in the hall and tells them to evacuate. However, this student is our guy and he tells him that due to the risk of collapse, they're not allowing anyone inside the building for safety reasons. He is back in his Gandalf arc and he will not let them pass until faculty and staff arrive. Elte asks if Ed is under special instruction, but he replies that he is in fact acting on his own, since in these matters, Sylvania basically has a shop system. 3 people are aware of the story's flow. Lortel, who seeks to take revenge for her childhood and empty the seat for the merchantry's president, and Elte, who is determined to thwart her plans and purchase the sage-sealed grimoire. The final player is Alice, who is using both Lortel and Elte, and she is the root cause of the twist in the story. Ed expects her to be on the 5th floor with Lortel, though he is not sure why Alice betrayed her. Ed wonders if he needs to go to the 5th floor to get rid of her, but changes his mind since Taylor's party will run into her anyway. He leaves the fight against Alice to the heroes. He trusts very much in their battle skills and ability to overcome difficult foes. The matter that he has to handle is whatever Elte has planned for Opheles Hall. As long as Ed keeps him out, the events will continue as they should. He bows in recognition of Elte Kachellan, the president of the Elte merchantry, and asks him to speak to the academy to ensure that he is treated with the respect he deserves, trying to get him out of the hall. However, the man forms his own conclusion about our dude, and says with strong certainty that Ed is working with Lortel against him. The next chapter starts from 10 minutes ago, where Janica and Ed had wandered back into the Opheles Hall, and our guy was surprised to find Zig still exercising in his room. The Wolfman explains that he was just avoiding taking rash actions, since it was not like the building would fall and kill him. He also asks why our guy destroyed the wall because that would make the room cold. But our dude is thinking of how Ziggs doesn't even look like a mage with those 6 pecs. Ziggs, of course, greets Janica and they both apologize for the rough encounter during the Glaskin incident. Then, the Wolfman makes an observation, and asks if Ed and Janica are dating, which of course makes the spirit sorcerer freak out. Our dude isn't bothered though, and Wolfman apologizes for asking such a rude question out of the blue. Then, Ziggs asks curiously why they came all this way to find him, and our dude asks him for a favor. Back in the present, our guy is trying to convince Elte to leave Opheles Hall by convincing him to talk to the Academy's administration first to make sure he is treated with respect. However, the Golden King sees through that ruse and deduces with a malicious glint in his eyes that our dude is supporting Lortel. He asks if he fell for her looks, then tells him to take advantage of getting into his own good books instead of siding with Foxy, because he might not get paid if Elte wins. He tells our guy that she was born with the blood of a fox and backstabs everyone she sees. Since he raised her as a child, he knows her better than anyone else. He will give Ed double the gold coins she offered, if he gets out of the way. Our dude thanks him for the offer, but he is unimpressed, and confesses that he was promised a total of 0 gold coins, so there's no point in doubling that. Elte is surprised, but he will not back down and switches to violence. He tells his henchmen to dispose of Ed quietly and they all launch at him. They corner him so that he cannot escape, but Ziggs uses his magic to blast them away. Ed leaves Ziggs and Janica to deal with them, saying he'll come back after he checks out a situation. They happily do his favor and fight the henchmen and Elte. The Golden King tells the henchmen not to hold back while fighting them and the battle begins. Meanwhile, Ed runs. He races, wondering if he should go find Lortel to ask her about the situation. To his shock, he immediately finds her and is surprised that she's still in the building. He says they will go to the back door and get out, then asks if she can run. She must not fall behind and she must run as fast as she can. There was always a reason for all goodwill and trust. Even Cheryl, the elite merchantry's receptionist, acts all flirty with Lortel because he anticipates that she will give out some money-making information by mistake. Cadden, the merchantry's employee, becomes quite lively in front of Lortel because she'd often tip him off about stuff. Even Teeny, the pet bird raised at the academy, clings to her because the feed she provides is of the highest quality. All goodwill has always come with a price in Lortel's world. Ed races ahead of her, saying they don't have time to go into detail but Alice has betrayed her. Lortel blames herself for a stupid, foolish mistake. Janica grew up receiving the love and goodwill of others so much that she treated the world with the exact same love and goodwill. Lortel was not like Janica. The day she made Ed the offer, she had seen the love-struck way the spirit sorcerer looked at him. It was the look of someone who loved something without needing anything in return. Foxy had thought that she might have a chance at a relationship like that too and ended up spilling all of her plans to Alice. She had not realized that her hopes would be put to shame. Usually, her attitude in life was to trust no one. In fact, even after seeing Alice like that, she should not have lost sight of her own gloomy, grimy self. She should not have dared to think that someone like her could live a romantic life. Her goal had only been to occupy Opheles Hall, and she bought 5 people to achieve that goal. However, Alice, Shenny, and Kelly joined hands with Elte. Willain also wanted to join Elte so he would not take her side. She does not expect our guy to side with her either. She apologizes, even though she knows that she should not. He is her last remaining ally, but she confesses that she has no money to pay him for his loyalty as the situation right now is unstable. However, he is unimpressed and reminds her, loudly, that he did not ask for a rundown. They don't have time for her depression because if Elte catches her, everything is over. He tells her that in order to plan any future, they have to escape first. Goodwill and trust. Lortel always believed they happen for a reason. If there is no reason, then those people cannot be trusted. That is how she learned to live her life. She explains that the merchantry headquarters plan to rig the market prices. After the massive hunt of the monsters in the eastern mountains last summer, the price of armor fell. Then they purchased and monopolized all the armor and traded them internally. So, in short, the plan is manipulative trading. For that plan, her father needed money urgently, so he found someone who would buy the sage-sealed grimoire at a good price. He sent her to Sylvania to steal the book. Ed now understands the plan. In manipulative trading, merchants A, B, and C monopolize a cheap product in the market and artificially increase its price by trading among each other. It's a classic method of price manipulation. Since the product's price continuously rises at an unbelievable rate, people will believe it will soon be unaffordable. They will then hurry and buy the product. If they sell the products they've gathered at this moment, they can make a ridiculous amount of profit. However, such manipulative trading is founded on trust. If merchants B and C sell the product without Merchant A's knowledge, the price would instantly fall. Merchant A, who desperately sold off their bonds in order to mass buy the product and monopolize it, would suffer bankruptcy. In this scenario, Elte is Merchant A, and he would be put in a difficult situation where he could lose his powers because of the sudden huge loss. For this plan, Lortel bought off countless others that were related to merchants B and C for many years. Only when Elte is absent from his position at headquarters can the 6 big merchants she bought off have the rights to sale transferred to them. She was going to use the Opheles Hall occupation to burn a hole in the Academy's finances, which increases the chance of success in the negotiation talks for the purchase of the grimoire. That would bring Elte out of headquarters and force him to get the money he needs. Then Lortel can use the chance to sell off the armor at the headquarters. Lortel is shocked that Ed knows so much. He also deduces that she just needs to send a message to the merchant's headquarters to sell the armor. She has a carrier pigeon in her room. It is her direct line of communication with her forces inside the headquarters. She wins as long as she sends that pigeon to the headquarters and stays hidden till the sale is done. However, her father is expecting that as well. She is sure that he is planning to capture her and make the traders on the inside confess about the plan. However, Ed tells her to listen. From this point onwards, she must hide and leave the rest to him. If he was in Elte's place, he would have people stand at the 2 bridges that lead to the Arkan Mountains. They'll definitely try to track them down. Lortel needs to talk to the horsemen in the quarters and send the empty carriage to the Arkan Mountains. The horsemen should then leave the carriage at a suitable spot and run away from there. That way, they'll think she is on the outskirts of the Arkan Mountains. Ed then tells Lortel to go to the incomplete hut in the forest in the north. She just needs to hold out there for 3 days. He will send the pigeon in her room to the headquarters. A simple message will make her allies take care of the complex matters. He shakes her and tells her that someone is guarding the back door, so he will take care of the outside and run to her room. She just has to wait till he's gotten rid of the guard, and then escape to the quarters. Like a long-time ally merchant, he perfectly and harmoniously made a move and handled matters without wasting any time. Lortel actually believes she can trust him and leave things to him. He asks why she is so out of it, and she replies that she understands what she has to do. It might even work, but she asks him why he is even helping her. He sighed heavily with a groan and just said that he felt like he should. Then he walks away. She sits heavily on the floor, thinking that something is loud. The loud is not the last fight between Alice and Taylor and his friends. It is also not the fight from the first floor either. The close and loud sound was her own heartbeat as tears fell from her eyes. Ed pops out and finds Shenny the dishwasher guarding the door with a weapon in hand. He calls her bland as the supposed last obstacle. Now this painstaking attempted takeover will reach its end. All of Opheles Hall's runes went to the one with the command. The swordsman who could hold her own in front of the combat faculty students, and an intermediate magic user without a single flaw, the chief made Alice. Despite all that, she could not defeat Taylor McClure because he was the main character. Act 2, Scene 3, Conquest of Chief Maid Alice, the final battle begun. Meanwhile, Ed faces off against Shenny. He is almost out of mana, but he's got 2 or 3 more basic spells left in him. Shenny charges at him lightning fast with her sword in hand. He manages to dodge her first attack, knowing that she would aim to stab his leg. He already knew her pattern of fighting, as well as the scope for prediction preceding her reaction speed. He catches her hand before she can pull out one of the daggers strapped to her thigh. The privilege of the twin sisters, blessed by the same star from birth, is called ability sharing. Once per day, they are granted the ability to share a skill with their twin. Shenny chooses low-level telekinesis magic and sends the daggers flying at Ed. Shenny feels smug at first, but gapes in shock at him standing before her, unfazed, with a few daggers embedded in him. He knows that the borrowed abilities are not refined. The wounds from the flying blades are not deep. He pulls out the daggers from his wound and tosses them aside. He kicks away her weapons and pins her down, telling her that it's over. Shenny screams that she cannot disappoint her mistress Alice, and she struggles underneath his hold. However, he informs her that her dear mistress will lose. The dishwasher screams in her defense, saying Alice has endured so much pain and fought so many battles. She has also saved so many orphans. To be honest, he does not know much about Alice. The game did not go into an in-depth analysis of Alice's background. All it covered was her fight against Taylor. Shenny explains she only got her job thanks to her mistress' sacrifice. She would never have been able to earn money for herself. She wouldn't even be alive if not for her. Ed fights against the guild and says that is none of his business. He still feels the same after hearing the story. Shenny cries with hatred and eventually passes out. He does not know the stories of any of the extras, so he can't do anything about people he does not know. There are already way too many stories that will never come to light. All the losses faced from the Ophelia Hall incident far outweigh the time Alice spent rescuing orphans. People who decide their course of action based on such philosophies are the ones with lives worth living at the moment. However, his course of action and ultimate goal has not changed from when he first possessed this body. He will survive, no matter what. After incapacitating Shenny, Ed acquired a new skill, pain endurance. Ed sneaks into Lortel's room and briefly admires the luxurious room. Everything is arranged neatly, it suits Lortel's tastes. Quickly, he writes the letter informing the merchants that Elte is in Sylvania and it will take at least 3 days for him to return. All the acquired gear is to be sold. He sends the carrier pigeon flying its way through the rain and the night sky. Bruised and battered, Ed stumbles back to his camp. He hopes his wounds will heal soon. If not for the help of Ziggs, Janica, and many others, Lortel would have been captured by Elte and her downfall would have been swift. The carriage Lortel hired would likely be speeding out of the Arkan Mountains. Elte has no choice but to chase it. Even if the coachman is captured, it would already be too late to stop the carrier pigeon. If all goes according to plan, he would find Foxy waiting at the hut. However, he spots her before he's even reached the hut. He thinks at first that she has come to greet him, until he realizes that she's holding a knife. He reminded himself that the person he'd chosen to trust was the backstabbing golden daughter. With Elte gone, Alice must now rely on Lortel, which means Shenny and Kelly will side with her. Welaine can be bought just like last time, but he is a variable that can't be bought with money. This means that Lortel might be unable to trust him. If she just gets rid of him in this remote part of the woods, her perfect crime will be a success. She would use and dispose of any human. That was her true villainous nature. He has to use his brain if he wants to survive this encounter, but he is too weak. Lortel swings her knife, but she only cuts off a piece of cloth and uses it to bandage Ed's hand. She asks why he got so hurt and offers to help him. The rain stopped, so she built a bonfire. She brings him inside so that they can warm themselves together. Ed asks her if everything went according to plan, and Lortel proudly responds that the horseman promised to draw as much attention as possible, even if he had to put his life on the line. He wonders if she threatened the man's family to make the horseman that loyal. If the plan goes well, she will have power over the Elte Merchant Association. He would have much to benefit since she owes him a great deal, and asks if that cheers him up. However, Ed barely reacts, and she smiles. She adds that she will never forget what he did for her, but he just tells her to hand over the 20 gold as earlier promised. However, Lortel has a question for him. She asks about how close he has gotten with Janica. Oblivious, Ed just responds that the spirit sorcerer is a good person, and she agrees. However, Foxy admits that she's not as nice as her kind senior, Janica. Meanwhile, at Ophelie's Hall, Elte left after receiving a certain report from his subordinate, and his interest in Ophelie's Hall had completely dissipated. Ziggs wasn't doing well fighting the mercenaries, mostly because he was more focused on stopping his comrade from completely ending the mercenaries. At first, Janica had looked worried, but at some point, the spirits started going all out in the fight. She needed to be stopped before any casualty took place. Ziggs asks if she's upset, and she lies that she's not, while rage is burning in her eyes. The next day, the incident is over and Ed considers going to class. Unfortunately, his uniform is completely wrecked and he's too broke to buy a new one. Ziggs lended him his uniform and told him all about the incident. Welaine took the blame for the damage to Ophelie's Hall, and Alice, who'd been subdued, went completely silent on the issue. With no response from Elte's side, the only conclusion was that the plan was a success. Now, events could continue as they were supposed to, and Ed waited patiently for a carrier pigeon with good news. The incident affected his labor power negatively, since he's not in a very good shape. His body is sore. Physically demanding work is too much for him, but he still has a lot to do. Fortunately, his advanced crafting skills slots are open, so acquiring skills takes priority, and he already knew which skill to master. Spirit Formula Infusion, compatible with Spirit Sorcery and Magic Engineering, which is great for crafting household and combat amenities. To master Spirit Formula Infusion, he must form a contract with a spirit and create at least one artifact that contains Spirit Formula, then it becomes instinctive. Magic engineering requires successfully disassembling and assembling an item of a certain level of magic engineering at least once. He doesn't want to waste spirit slots unnecessarily, but for now he should make a contract with a lower spirit. Janica pops out and explains that she's not in class because of a headache and body pains, so she came out to get some fresh air from the woods. He asks in concern if she hurt herself, but she assures him that she's fine. Instead, she asks if Lortel is okay, and Ed confirms that she's resting inside the cabin. She has been there since the Opheles Hall incident, but there's still work to do. They persuaded the former chief maid, Alice, and laid the groundwork for the negotiation to purchase the sage-sealed grimoire. While Lortel awaits a reply from the Elte merchants, she must stay hidden with an anxious heart. It is frustrating, but she finds that she doesn't hate it because she gets to watch Ed all day, and that makes her heart race. His unconditional kindness and selfless trust make her feel safe. That feeling, which came naturally to most people, was more precious than gold to Lortel, who had spent her entire life on the cold floor of the streets. At no cost does she want to give up the safe feeling of being with Ed to anyone else, not even her sweet senior Janica. Janica's life was overflowing with unconditional kindness from her family and friends. Surely, she would let Lortel have this one thing. If the spirit sorcerer would not give him up, then Foxy was willing to fight for her knight in shining armor, and fighting was her area of expertise. 3 days of living together was a thrilling and perfect advantage over Janica. First, Lortel planned to bury the cabin in gold and seduce Ed with money. However, she backtracks as she recalls that she is broke right now, and that Ed might not appreciate the gesture. Then, she considered helping with his tuition. She considered cutely trying to play it off like she's not paying it for his sake, but nearly died from cringe just thinking about it. While she's still pondering her lack of experience with romance, Lucy comes into the cabin ready for a nap. Lortel is surprised to see her, but Lucy just wants to nap in the sunlit spot inside the cabin. Ed grabs Lucy and throws her out like she is a stray cat that wandered in, and he tells Foxy that she can go back to sleep. Judging by how he acted, Foxy deduces that Lucy comes around often. To Lortel's great disappointment, she finds that she has yet another rival. However, she is confident that she'll settle the score in just 3 days. On the second day of Lortel's cabin life, she finds Janica has come to visit again, erasing her plans of spending time alone with Ed. She also finds Lucy napping in the cabin again. Meanwhile, Ed crafted some handmade bricks, learning the skill stonemasonry. He also finally created a brick fireplace, and his crafting proficiency increases. Resting after the day's work, he eats with Janica and Lortel the pastries brought around by Belle. Nothing much has happened since the Opheles incident, so Lortel assumes that things are going as planned. He says that they should not let their guard down just yet, since there are things to do. Lortel agrees since she is yet to compensate him for his 20 gold coins, and asks if he'd prefer goods instead of cash. While Janica glares with jealousy, Ed mentions that he would like some construction materials, like excess magic engineering equipment. Lortel promises to check the inventory and tell him if they have any spares, but she'll also try to remember since she has most of the inventory memorized. Then, Ed asks Janica for a favor. He wants her to teach him how to form a spirit contract with a lower spirit. Janica is happy to help, ready to help him form a contract with even an intermediate level spirit. Ed is impressed and she immediately begins the lesson with spirit connection. She summons a small bird called Karis to see if Ed can communicate with spirits. Ed can hear the bird faintly, which assures her that he will progress faster than expected. However, Karis then loudly complains that Ed doesn't have enough time in his routine for magic training. He also adds that they know this thanks to the weekly report meeting they have. He also complains that our guy should concentrate on the cabin construction instead of getting distracted. Janica immediately shuts down the connection with Karis and asks with a forced smile if Ed heard anything. He mumbles something about a weekly report meeting, but she has no answer to that response. Lortel then pops up with information on the magic engineering equipment. The inventory does in fact have more leftover stock than expected, so she has enough for Ed. He asks if they can sell them at a discount price that the 20 gold coins can cover, and she laughs. The amount of magic equipment is not large and they're basically a dead asset. However, to give them for free is unthinkable. So, Lortel asks that he comes to the Merchant Association once every 3 days as payment. She can sell it at discounted price, and when he comes around, they can have some tea and talk a bit. Janica asks why she can't give him for free since he helped her so much. However, Lortel is a merchant and a professional, and she refuses to give it out for free. Meanwhile, Ed's mind was only on magic engineering and spirit magic. Suddenly, Belle, the new chief maid of Opheles Hall, arrived with a message for Lortel. She apologizes for showing up when things aren't peaceful, and she apologizes for being the bearer of bad news. However, she has a message from the former chief maid to Lortel. What do you think this message is about? Moving on, we see that Clara had something very important to discuss with Belle while she did the laundry. She is so sure that Belle will be shocked to hear the secret, and she makes the head maid promise not to tell anyone. She believes that Janica likes the dastardly rotten Ed Rothtailor. Now, this is all old news to Belle, but she notes that Janny's friend must be worried because of his terrible reputation. However, Clara does agree that he has been improving of late, so she will support Janica as her friend. Another issue is that the spirit sorcerer has been complaining about Lortel of late. Foxy missed the opening ceremony along with Ed, and they were both absent yesterday as well. Clara is worried that angelic Janica doesn't stand a chance if Foxy already has her eyes on our guy, but she doesn't understand how he hasn't noticed Janica's affections yet, and wonders if he's toying with her. Belle just says that perhaps he is too occupied to have time for romance or dating. But the other girl is sure that our dude is simply messing with them, and he's so lucky to have girls pining over him. Belle considers Lortel a sly thieving cat in front of a fish shop. Janica is a trembling kitten, and Lucy, who is always there, is just a cat. Just thinking about them gives her a headache. But more importantly, she has an important message to pass to Foxy from Alice. The flickering bonfire drives away the darkness of the night as Belle carries Lucy and leaves Ed's camp with Janica in tow. It bothers him that Foxy's whereabouts were exposed to someone related to the Opheles Hall. Ed puts on his worn-out uniform while Lortel reads the letter of victory that was finally delivered by the carrier pigeon. It is now time to return to school. She deduces that her father must be making his last stand at the headquarters of the Merchant Association. It is a futile last struggle, but he'll finally be too busy to care about her. There are chances that Elte might have a few tricks up his sleeve, but Slog, who aspires to be the next association chairman, supports her, so she will trust him. Her biggest concern was Alice, but she's also been taken care of. Alice will not reveal Foxy's manipulation because she needs the money of the merchant that wins. The parchment that Belle delivered was filled with the list of orphanages she sponsored, the maintenance cost a year, and how to support them. The workload of the former chief maid was relentless, and her health deteriorated, but the academy ignored her complaints. Eventually, she became unable to work and care for the orphanage, so she made a bet with her life on stake. No one guessed how dire her situation was, due to her stoic and unemotional nature. Of course, her followers seem to understand her. Alice is only siding with Lortel because it looks like she will win. Regaining trust will be difficult, but the former chief maid is willing to try again. There's no such thing as sympathy in the world of merchants. She knows this better than anyone. But she looked relieved that Alice had repented, saying there are no permanent enemies or allies. She is finally ready to leave Ed's camp and wishes him goodbye, asking him to stop by the Merchant Association's branch to write the contract they discussed. He gives her a torch to light her way, yet she hesitates. When he asks why, she mentions that he's taller than she thought. She says that it might seem rushed, but to win, she has to take some risks. After all, the essence of human relationships is all about push and pull. Grabbing his tie, she points out that it's all twisted. He mumbles that he doesn't need to care about his appearance since no one is looking. However, she responds that there's nothing wrong in keeping neat. They are students of Sylvania after all. Suddenly, she tugs him forward with his tie, and they share a kiss by the warmth of the fire, under the light of the moon. She giggles and mentions that the raspberries they ate that evening were delicious. Just thinking about them makes her happy. However, he just tells her to stay within her limits. She is a little disappointed that he's not as excited, and she decides to leave the ball in his court. After all, she needs to practice pushing him away too. Lortel leaves, walking then running away. Although our guy tries his hardest to avoid getting involved with main scenario characters, as expected when it comes to life, nothing goes according to plans, and he can barely hide his blush. The stars he sees from the forest are still beautiful, and the moon is bright. The sound of crickets chittering, and the crackling of the campfire are the same. He feels the trajectory of the scenario he gets involved in continues to go astray. Regardless of his will, he feels a sense of discomfort as if he's being sucked into the center of the story. His plan of watching the scenario unfold smoothly from the sidelines has not changed. He has no greed and he will ignore what happened that night. He shall get his diploma and pay attention to his stats. The realization that what felt like an easy plan was actually a reckless and challenging endeavor came not too far into the future. Soon, the summer passed and fall came around. On a bright sunny day, the spirits brought the news of the kiss to Janica. They tell her that they cannot sit by and that they must intervene. Even the fire dragon spirit, Tarkin, compliments Lortel's ability to play with people's hearts. The spirit sorcerer is horrified and asks how our dude reacted. The spirits who have front row seats to this chaotic love story tell her of how Ed seemed to reject Foxy. Tarkin reports that our dude was so cold to her that he even cringed. This means that either he is impotent or he does not see her as a woman. Janica is greatly relieved to hear all this, but Tarkin adds that men aren't good at being defensive, they are better at being proactive. In his experience, people like Foxy cling and burn more intensely the more they are rejected. The spirit sorcerer thinks that's not such a big deal since he does not return her feelings, but Tarkin scolds her. They point out that Foxy will steal him away at this rate. She is supposed to teach him spirit magic and use the opportunity to kiss him when they are alone. While Tarkin is being dragged away by the other spirits, another spirit tells Janica that she should just be herself. She should emphasize her naive and cheerful vibe so that she can experience a thrilling, exciting moment with Ed. With a blush, she admits that she would not mind feeding each other. Unfortunately for her, Ed is already spoon-feeding Lucy. She spits out in disgust, and he admits that the taste is bland. He is using her as a taste test machine for honing his cooking skills. However, he decides he'll postpone that until he gets a wider variety of ingredients. Key stats greatly influence the proficiency of living skills. Raising just one stat drops the efficiency, so he needs to increase them all evenly. The only problem with this plan is that he's too busy and has been occupied since school began. Even if he cuts back on sleep time, he only has 5 or 6 hours for survival activities outside of school. He's worrying about the efficiency of his survival activities because he needs to check if the scenario is progressing well. Even in his regular life, he kept a close watch on key students, like Taylor and the 4 heroines. The hero seems to be growing well, with Ayla doing her role to support him. Princess Fionia also seems to be having no problems, though it's about time for her to clash with Lortel. Clarice will enroll next year, so he's not worried about her. Instead, he watches the Golden Daughter like he's walking on thin ice. With Elte's early dismissal, it is uncertain how this will affect how she acts. It seems her plan to get her hands on the Sage-sealed grimoire remains unchanged. The reason Ed has been needing more time of late is because it is about time he started checking up on the faculty building. Because the final boss of this second act is Professor Glast, and he's looking into the hidden mastermind behind the Opheles Hall takeover. Assistant Professor Claire Elfin is the one to report her suspicions concerning a hidden mastermind. He believes strongly in her good intuition, but tells her to be careful not to miss the important stuff, like the thesis on divine science that he asked her to find. She shakily promises to find it by the next morning. In the assistant professor's office of the Opheles Hall faculty building, Annie's reports to Claire that she has gathered the materials related to the Opheles Hall takeover incident. The assistant professor thanks her and goes through the report. She wonders if she needs to be concerned about a case that has mostly been concluded. Besides, she is so tired already. However, no matter how she looks at it, something is off. Meanwhile, Lortel meets up with Ed at the Elte Merchant Association. She apologizes for her tardiness and suggests that he visit her again next week. She's even prepared some tea and refreshments as an apology. The magic engineering equipment is ready, so he can pick it up at the counter. He comments on her fancy clothes, and she explains she had to dress up a bit for an important appointment. She asks how she looks, but he quickly changes the topic and asks about the appointment. She asks about updates on the cabin, and he reports that it is in its final stages. She notes he will need furniture, but her products are too high-end and expensive. She can't give them for free since that goes against her professional ethics as a merchant, so she breaks a chair and says she'll hand him the damaged item since woodworking is his talent. He tries to refuse it, but expresses his gratitude anyway. She marvels at how he has no change in expression at all, even after she made the winning move. He still refuses to see her as a woman. She sees him as a man, and even offers him aid because of her ulterior motives. He is not sure how to respond, but she does not expect an answer since she does not engage in fights that she cannot win. However, she promises that someday she won't be the only one that can't contain herself. A seductive smile is the same, whether the odds are in her favor or she's in a tight spot. It is in a merchant's nature to never reveal their feelings, but she can't stop her hands from shaking. The next day, Janica meets up with Ed and is eager to begin their lessons. She summons a fire spirit and asks him to try focusing his magic and forming a connection. He gives it a go, and is finally able to hear the small spirit speak in her hands. Mug, the low-rank fire spirit, appears and is honored to contract with him. He relays that in accordance with the agenda of the last report meeting, regarding the proposal for the selection of a contract spirit for our guy, he passed the voluntary round, topped the interviews, cleared the 3rd round of the council's agenda, and completed the 4th round of qualification verification. He also has the highest performance in magic efficiency practice independently conducted in the Northern Woods, and prides himself on having the best unspoken connection amongst low-rank spirits at his level. The overwhelmed Ed is shocked to hear Mug vow to set his heart on fire to serve him. Our guy had once gotten a spirit-type skill while playing the game, and he often laughed, joked, and cheered with his spirit. They created a strong bond back then, so Mug has a completely different vibe. Ed is surprised that he's so strict, and she explains that selected a spirit with a good magic power efficiency ratio among those that she's contracted with. In the process, there was a slightly complicated selection process that Tarkin planned between the spirits. Mug, the low-rank fire spirit, was victorious, so she gently hands over the spirit to Ed. He marvels at his warmth, and she informs him that when he connects with a contract spirit, he will be able to feel their physical and magical power, even when they're not manifested. She warns him not to connect too hard or he'll get too hot. He should also ensure to keep it in control. He asks if the level of connection changes the fire power, and she says that makes Mug sound like a machine. However, Ed is amazed to see the tiny fire spirit in his hands, and Mug asks for his orders. The little guy is like a portable heater. It's an unbelievably useful survival tool, and he doesn't even consume firewood. Janica expresses her joy at his excitement, since he always looks exhausted. She offers to help if he needs anything. She will also teach him about the power of the connection and the senses themselves before the day's first class. He will learn faster if he is with her, and quickly reach the level for forming contracts with middle-rank spirits. They also need to practice spirit combat, and free up time to reserve the combat training room. She also has some accessories that increase the connection, but these are all in her room. Suddenly, she silences herself mid-sentence, and remarks that she is very busy, and that lots of people want her to teach them spirit magic. So, it is quite difficult for her to make time for him. She's saying all this suddenly because she recalls everyone telling her to play it cool, and not to give away too much. She says it is a bit much for him to ask her to teach him, and he agrees. He wonders if he should try to pay her, but she is horrified. She knows he is struggling as it is, so she will not take his money when he needs to save it. They are close enough not to need that, and him saying that makes her sad. However, he points out that she asked for compensation. With a blush, she confesses that Clara talked to her about push and pull, and about how she's too generous. He agrees with Clara, but she says that she's not like that with everyone. She will tell him the details later, but for now they will meet at the combat training ground next time. So, she will reserve it and let him know. She also promises to bring a good accessory, and she'll bring textbooks if he needs any, then she waves him goodbye. He also waves goodbye and little Mug salutes. Ed has now acquired the advanced crafting skill, Magic Engineering, an advanced crafting skill. The magic engineering supplies that he got from Lortel were surprisingly simple enough that he could analyze them in no time. He finally learned a proper advanced skill. If he ever runs out of fuel, he can use Mug, and if he runs out of mana, he will use the fireplace. Now, he can reliably warm the air. His living environment is now guaranteed to be stable, and just knowing that little fact makes him feel like a huge weight has been lifted from his shoulders. It's already late, so he goes to check on the traps. Meanwhile, Assistant Professor Claire wanders the woods in search of the hidden mastermind behind the incident, and she believes Ed is the culprit. Everyone at the scene was a student or staff of Awfully's Hall, but Taylor and Ed have no direct connection to the incident. Taylor also helped in solving the incident, which leaves our guy looking suspicious. She came to the woods since she heard that he appears here often, but unless he's eating and sleeping in the forest, she doesn't expect to see him in the middle of the night. To her absolute shock, she sees him hauling Lucy and a dead bleeding deer through the woods. Principal Obel is a great man comparable to the Archmage Glocked or the Great Safe of Sylvania. Yet, even he would have to use all of his powers against Lucy Merrill. However, to her horror, she sees Ed casually carrying Lucy's unconscious body, and is sure that he must be the evil mastermind that she is searching for. Seeing Ed carrying the powerful Lucy through the woods, Claire is sure that she has talent for being a detective. She sees him drag the powerful mage to a cabin in the woods, like the start of a horror movie. He throws down both Miss Lazy and the deer, mumbling about how he has so much to do and should go to bed early. While he is inside, the assistant professor sneaks into the camp to rescue Lucy. Quietly, she reaches for her leg, but she suddenly summons her magic in defense and demands that the assistant professor confess her identity. Claire introduces herself with a nervous laugh, and is shocked to see Miss Lazy crawl back into the small wood tent outside, glaring at her like a cat. Lucy then zooms off into the sky, leaving the assistant professor speechless. Claire rushes back to Professor Glass, asking if he remembers Ed, who was ousted from his family, but he does not remember useless trash. So, she asks if he knows Lucy, because our guy overpowered the powerful lazy mage to the point that she could not use her powers. She rambles a bit and he points out that her story is all over the place. She says that what is important is that she used magic that records memory on the first floor of the Awfully's Hall. He asks her to write an apology for using that kind of magic without permission, but she already wrote it in advance. Regardless, she can plead that these were extenuating circumstances, because Ed sits and acts like a mastermind. Professor Glass is speechless at her reasoning. He asks if that is all the evidence she has, and she adds that Arkai carried an unconscious Lucy. The brooding Professor Glass asks if he was just moving her while she slept. Now, Claire is speechless because she had not thought of that. He sends her out and tells her to return with her apology letter and explanation. Meanwhile, the broody professor looks over the reports and notes that our dude tried to stop the hero and his friends, but the heroes had been victorious. Someone ordinary like him could not stop that group, but he pauses when he sees something in the recorded memories. Meanwhile, our dude crafts again and successfully creates the ceremonial dagger, Explosion. It is the dagger he had ever since he started living on his own, and now he's been able to engrave it and turn it into something useful. Mug cheers him on and compliments his craft, saying that the more it is used, the more efficient it becomes. He is proud of Ed for advancing again in skill and sings songs of praises in his honor. Ed, however, feels awkward and stops Mug by pulling on his wing. The low-rank spirit cries about not knowing what he did, and our dude finally tells Mug to drop the formalities. Low-ranking spirits elevate their status through contracts with spirit sorcerers, so he understands why they are pleased to have a contract with a strong sorcerer like Janica. But he barely has any spirit power, and asks if Mug got bribed by her, because he is way too excited to be contracted to him. He insists that the spirit confess what is going on since they'll be together for a long time. Mug finally breaks down in tears and confesses the truth. He is ambitious and desires success. He has formed a contract with our guy to receive refined magic from the vicinity of Janica, since this will allow him to grow at twice the rate of low-ranking spirits. He also heard the rumors about the tyrant Ed, and about how he has a strong authoritarian temperament, so he's been acting this way to appease him. He had a really hard time being such a low-ranking spirit, because higher-ranked spirits are kind of mean. Ed comforts him, telling him that they're all doing what it takes to survive. Mug says he cannot talk to him in such a casual manner and prefers a more formal tone, so our dude agrees as long as it makes him happy. His combat skills are still making slow progress, but his physical stamina has greatly increased, now that he is no longer inferior to the average adult mage. The storage is stocked with meat, vegetables, spices and such, and he no longer needs to sleep outdoors while hungry. He can easily master the classes with simple memorizing and sequence theories with enough time and effort. Reducing sleep and repeatedly practicing will forcibly cram the information into his head, since it has nothing to do with talent. Every day is a forced march for him, and while the days are not gentle, things are better than he started. Suddenly, he heard someone calling out his name. It was Janica asking him to snap out of it. He apologizes because he was lost in thought, and she tells him not to overdo it. It is good to work hard, but he should value his health more. He has to focus since he received 3 letters today. The first came from the academy, the second from the merchantry, and neither were remarkable. However, he had to read the third with attention, because it is evidence that the flow of the story has already significantly distorted. The main event of Act 2, the negotiation for the purchase of the Sage-sealed grimoire, is currently in progress. Originally, the negotiation for the Sage-sealed grimoire was a tug-of-war between the Academy and the merchant. However, because of Elte's downfall, the original client that contacted him, Crepin Rothtailor, got involved. This eventually results in a 3-way conflict between the Academy, the Elte Merchant Association, and the Rothtailor family. The head of the family planned to use the grimoire to research eternal life, and when things went south, he personally jumped into the negotiations. Patriarch Crepin is a boss who only appears in Act 4, and he is so strong at that point that there's no way to suppress him. No matter what, our dude must exclude that guy from this episode. If that man gets the grimoire, then he'll walk away. However, if he gets the grimoire when he is already strong enough to be the final boss of Act 4, then it might be impossible to clear the game, regardless of any information advantage he has. The letter he received includes the man's actions, suspicions about them. It also has an invitation. The person who delivered the letter was Claire, the princess' personal guard. Principal Obel came to the princess about Sylvania's desperate financial situation. Since it's a private institution, he cannot just support the Sylvania Academy as he wants. If this continues, the merchantry will eventually get the grimoire. It would be embarrassing for it to be sold for money when it is like the Academy's heart, so Obel secretly asked for her help. However, she thinks it is strange that Big Bad Crepin knew to participate in the negotiation. Her guard thinks that our guy might have been a snitch, and that he would do anything to return to his family. However, Lortel doubts it, so she has come to share tea with the princess. Fionia is surprised because she thought Foxy hated her. However, Foxy believes that accusation is unfair, especially since she has come to offer sincere advice. Big Bad Rothtailor got involved in the negotiations because of the downfall of her father. Fionia is surprised, and Redhead goes on to explain that her father had been contacted to purchase the grimoire. She only found out after her father had been defeated, of course. Her father lost his position, but his plan to purchase the grimoire has not changed since they've already put a lot of time and effort into it. Fionia thinks it is strange that they will sell it to the Rothtailor family after purchasing it. She believes the interests of both the merchantry and the Rothbads align, yet they are trying to buy the grimoire separately. Lortel confesses that she has no intention of selling to the Crepin, because it would be best to disassociate from business connections associated with her father. The princess asks why Foxy is revealing this now, and she replies that the enemy of her enemy is her friend. Fionia would benefit from keeping the Rothbads in check, and she gets to obtain the grimoire. She also stepped in because she was worried about Ed, so she's looking out for him. He is separated from his family, so it would be unfair if he was connected to this event. The princess is still suspicious of Foxy, and adds that Ed is useful. She might ask for his help on a personal level, appeal to authority, and even give out orders. However, if he says nothing despite all that, then she will have no choice but to use him. Lortel laughs that Fionia accuses her of deceiving and exploiting, when she is planning on exploiting our guy just the same. Claire immediately jumps to Fionia's defense, but Lortel reminds the princess that they will be allies just for this matter. She warns the princess not to try and use our guy in a half-assed attempt, because she might end up the one who gets used. The guard is upset and wants to punish Foxy, but Fionia lets her go. She is confused and cannot tell what our dude is up to. She is also dealing with the Crepin problem, and now she wonders if she should be wary of Foxy too, since the merchant has no respect for her status as a princess. She wonders if she will ever get the chance to see the merchant ever get flustered. Little does she know that Lortel gets flustered easily around Ed, especially when he shows up with Janica. They arrived at the Elte Company, Sylvania branch, but Foxy only prepared tea for herself and our dude, and she offered the spirit sorcerer cold water. She's being given the cold shoulder, but she acts nonchalant, knowing Foxy would charge her for anything she eats anyway. Our oblivious dude, however, offers to drink the cold water and gives the spirit sorcerer the tea. Fuming, Lortel quickly wants to give Ed the magic engineering equipment so that Janica will leave. They go into the store and she shows off her spotless brand new items that she's just giving to him for free, despite refusing to do the same for the spirit sorcerer. However, Foxy lies that the goods have defects, but the spirit sorcerer can see right through her flimsy fibs. What matters to the merchant is that these materials help our dude. He is hesitant about taking them for free, but she assures him to just regularly renew the contract with his visits. Janica suggests that she just quickly finish paying and end the contract, but Foxy says that is something she and our dude will discuss later. While the girls discuss, he feels a familiar sensation overtaking his body. It feels like he's floating in water. He's felt like this quite often because of his workload. He's been trying to keep an eye on Crep and Rothtailor, who got involved in the Grimoire fight. But there's 2 weeks before that happens. He's been busy making a mattress for the bed, stuffing it with feathers or assorted fabrics and sewn cloth to make it fluffy. He also needs to prepare the fawn he caught the other day, and to clean the inside of the cabin. He also has to make jerky for Lucy. He is so overwhelmed that he feels like he is drowning as the girls call his name in worry. Meanwhile, Fionia is pondering, acknowledging his resolute demeanor while fishing at the camp. His calmness and precision when he gave orders to solve the Glaskin situation, his reputation of focusing only on his studies, and Lortel's warning not to judge him lightly. Fionia wonders if her insight was off for the first time, so she needs to make sure one more time. That's why she ordered him to come visit her at the royal residence. However, her guard reports that he will not be joining them. She is surprised and asks how he can refuse a royal command, and Claire explains that he has passed out from overwork. Ed's current status is exhaustion, and he has come down with a fever. He is advised to take adequate rest to recover. It's hard to breathe and his whole body feels heavy. His lower belly also feels hot. He wakes on the bed in his log cabin to see Miss Lazy curled on his chest and sleeping like a cat. She's even talking in her sleep and he is offended. She is surprisingly light for a teenage girl, just like the way she looks, perhaps even lighter than that. So much that one would doubt that she's human. Yet, he cannot move with her on top of him. She's not acting any different, so he assumes there's something wrong with his body, a total physical breakdown. He's in his cabin, but the blanket is new, and he wonders if it's from the Elte merchantry. Just then, Lucy wakes and asks for food. He wonders if she does anything but eat and sleep. Suddenly, she congratulates him for waking, and informs him that his mana was horribly distorted. He's been overtraining in magic and learning spirit magic, as well as repeating that for months without rest. He asks if she was like this the whole time he was asleep, and she admits that it was not difficult, but it was boring, and she fell asleep several times. She's been walking on eggshells the whole time because of Lortel and Janica, and it was a hassle, but her care was necessary so they could not chase her away. She tells him not to get sick since it is hard and people die from it. She has watched Glocked, her grandfather figure, die in bed from a disease, so our dude thanks her for her healing. Suddenly, Zig shows up. He was not sure if he could use the cane stove, so he started a fire outside. It is a little awkward as Lucy is sitting on him, but she gets up and leaves, flying out the chimney. Ziggs wonders how many times this is, but it is not unusual for men to have several partners. He also wonders if this is the so-called openness of this civilization. Perhaps he has viewed civilization from a too rigid perspective. However, our dude asks why he's here, and explains that neither the spirit sorcerer nor Foxy could be around, since Janica had her attendance to fill up, and Lortel had to get back to her business. Ed points out the wolfman's longer hair and he explains that it happens during autumn. Our dude gets embarrassed about being fed by Ziggs, but there's nothing they can do about that, though perhaps it would have been better for a woman to help him. However, Foxy had said no women were allowed to have this task. As usual, Ed feels he must check out the scenario for changes and asks about students secretly mass-producing mandragoras that cause an incident. Ziggs admits that Elvira was behind that, but Taylor and Clebius handled it. This means that Act 2, Scene 5, Academy Exploration, was wrapped up nicely. He also asks about the monster handled by the Telos Order which snuck into the Academy's underground water system, but Taylor and the Wolfman also took care of that. This covers Act 2, Scene 7, Demon of the Sewers, which went by without any problems. The only major event left is the struggle for the Grimoire, and he asks how much time has passed. Ziggs informs him that it has been 10 days to add shock. Oblivious, the Wolfman goes on to say that the girls can't visit him today since they are busy. But Ed's mind is on something else entirely. He thought he'd passed out for a day or two, but he was out for 10 days, and he gulped down the bowl of food. He needs to send a message to Lortel immediately, because they do not have time. The day after he woke up, Act 2, Scene 10, the one full of variables, began, and so did the struggle over the sage-sealed grimoire. The ones involved are the Princess Fionia Clole, the representative of the Elte Merchantry's leader, Lortel Kachellan, and the man who strayed from the original storyline, patriarch of the Duke family, and the final boss of Act 4, Crepin Rothtailor. He greets the Princess Fionia, remarking on his pleasure at her health. It's been some time and he never got the chance to formally apologize, especially since she had such a tough time due to a foolish and thoughtless member of his family. As she ordered, he was disowned, but he still would like to apologize once again. She assures that everything is fine and he should not worry about it too much. Crepin Rothtailor is of the same bloodline of Ed, but he's also a noble, dignified, compassionate, and wise head of a ducal family. She can feel the respect that his attendants have for him in their every action as they serve him. However, his eyes see the true him and he is clearly evil. He also greets Lortel, the proxy of the Elte Trading Company. She introduces herself and says it is an honor to be in his presence. She is also the daughter of the Golden King, and he has heard much about his insight and adventurous spirit. She says that they go wherever there is a good profit to be made. After all, they always follow the scent of money. Negotiations for the purchase of the Sage Sealed Grimoire proceeds as follows. The negotiation team is assembled. Then they have lunch and check the condition of the item after. After that, the purchase method is confirmed. Each participant writes down their proposed bid price, and the highest bidder gets to buy it. The grimoire is a treasure of the Sylvania Academy. The Academy cannot afford to let it be publicly known that they're selling the valuable item due to financial difficulties. So, Principal Obel Frisues came up with a plan where Fionia will vouch for it, as an observer with her status as a princess, and the principal's proxy, Vice Principal Rachel, will quietly conduct the auction. The method is simple. Right there and right now, the highest bidder gets the grimoire. She had heard about the trading method in advance and looked into similar book trade, such the trade for the Book of Order, the Book of Similitude, and the Magic Travelogue. Intrinsic magical value, academic value as a research subject, and value as a simple luxury. Foxy probably knows the prices and transaction records of way more books by heart. However, the person who will take this book will be Crepin Rothtailor. They all write their bids on a paper and maids take the bids to the vice principal who officially receives the bid amount. She thanks him for presenting their valuable opinions. A single bid auction with no upper limit. The key in this rule is knowing the opponent's maximum bid amount. Lortel intends to make a profit, so she would not make a bid more than the highest book transaction price of 8,100 gold coins. Anything higher would be hard to resell and surely result in a loss. Also, if Crepin simply bids a bit more than Foxy's highest possible bid of 8,000 coins, the grimoire will be his. The vice president prepares to reveal the bid amounts, and she reveals that Crepin bid 8,500 gold coins, just as Fionia expected. The Rothtailor Patriarch is not someone who would visit the academy, just to make a profit from books transactions. The important question is why he wants it enough to pay such a large amount. Then, Lortel's bid is announced, and it is revealed that she bid 9,400 coins, much to Fionia's shock. The Sage Sealed Grimoire is then sold to the Elte Trading Company, and the princess is shocked that Lortel was not after profit. The Rothtailor Patriarch is visibly displeased and leaves for the contract signing, as the proxy of the Elte Company is asked to move to a private room. The princess cannot guess at Foxy's real goal, but wonders if her goal from the beginning was just to stop the grimoire from falling into the hands of Crepin. Though, she is not the type to act out of justice, and even if she did, the fact that he is evil and that his intentions are dark is something only the princess can guess. She doesn't even have evidence to that with her authority as a princess, so she guesses that someone requested or ordered Lortel to act as she did. Someone who knows the dark nature of the Rothtailor Patriarch and wants to stop him, and Fionia suspects Ed is this person. Even after being disowned by his family and thrown wild, he lived with such determination that he collapsed from overwork. Even then, he fought against the darkness of the Rothtailor family till the end. She has a headache as she wonders what she has done. She wonders how she could have driven such a person on the road to ruin, and she was overwhelmed with guilt. However, her misunderstanding might have been a blessing. Meanwhile, Lortel looks over the contract she's obtained that details the buyer, the seller, and the transaction amount. She knows that if she resells the grimoire to Duke Crepin, then the least amount she can buy it back is 8,500 coins. The difference would be 900 coins considering what she paid for it. She had lied about not planning to resell it to Duke Crepin, and looking through the letters she received from our guy, he has promised her anything as long as she purchases the grimoire. He has made a mistake saying that to a merchant, because she plans to collect big time. To her, a free pass with him for just 900 coins is a bargain. Lortel collapses on her bed with a happy smile on her face as she fantasizes about what she will request. If the princess saw the expression Foxy was making at the thought of him, she would cough up blood. In the end, the merchant won, and the wolfman tells Ed that he should have seen her face when he delivered the letter, and that it is a relief that Elka is so innocent. Our dude already figured that she would bet on her sexual attraction to him, and the Rothtailor Patriarch bet on his inside information. He almost feels sorry thinking about what will happen next. Suddenly, someone arrives in a cloud of dust. It is Janica, and she has come before lunchtime, running all the way from the faculty building as soon as she's done with her morning classes. She doesn't have any more classes to attend, and she'll do her assignments at night. Our dude apologizes for causing Janica so much trouble, and Ziggs reveals that she ran around the academy crying and rumors spread that she was heartbroken. She panicked and quickly tried to silence him, and she had her spirits drag him away, saying that the weather is cold so he should get going before he catches a cold. This leaves Janica with Ed and the crying mug, who in a dramatic outburst asks our dude to execute him for letting push himself so hard, which led to his illness. He had not even noticed the little fire guy's presence, and the spirit apologized that he feared his presence would affect his mana, so he got mana from her instead. Our dude thinks the spirit is overreacting, but Wolfman points out that he was unconscious for a long time, and Ed concedes. Suddenly, he realizes again that he was out for 10 days, which means all the meat he got would have gone rotten, and the fishing nets would be broken from lack of maintenance. He has lost all his food supplies, so now he has to start from the beginning. However, his friends will not let him overdo it again. They offer to help, especially as Wolfman has some free time until the exam, so he will help with hunting or woodworking. When it comes to work, our dude should just handle things as they come, and everything will work out. It suddenly occurred to Ed, while looking at his little wooden tent, that not long ago, he slept under a hastily built wooden shelter with not even a penny. He slept alone in darkness and was bitten by insects with no one to rely on. A lot of things were tedious, but he resolved way more issues and survived until now. Ziggs was right. Everything would work out, and Ed smiles. Meanwhile, Janica is worried about how tired he looks. She recalls that Merylda told her this is her chance. While Foxy is busy with negotiations, she should take advantage of the time. Foxy is clever and the spirit sorcerer must learn from her. In order to win a man, she must also become a fox. The forest spirit tells her to fix her outfit because she looks like a country housewife, and she agrees that her dressing looks shabby. The great wolf says that is perfect, since guys fall for the side of her that is good at managing everyday tasks. So, the spirit sorcerer should slyly and subtly show him that side of her. She should also roll up her sleeves more while she is at it, and show off the vibes of a wife who can go through hard times at his side. She must make progress when she goes to see him. Merylda is giving all this advice as a high-ranking wind spirit and dating expert, but she has absolutely no dating experience. Janica is curious about what kind of progress she should be making, but she's not to worry about that. Instead, the wind spirit asks what she was planning to do, and how she plans on getting closer to him. She says she wasn't planning to do anything, which infuriates the great wolf. She howls in sorrow so loudly that she shocks the birds out of the trees. At a time like this, the spirit sorcerer should not be wasting her opportunities, and Merylda scolds her for being ridiculous. A tough guy like him won't struggle for long, and he will grow at a ridiculous speed. She adds that there's no better winning strategy than being with him during the hardship. Janica is advised to use her position as the person who supported him during tough times, even if it requires calculation and cunning. She quickly says that she had a plan in mind and whispers her idea to the great wolf. Grudgingly, the wind spirit agrees that the plan is pretty good. It was quite late at night, and the stew that Janica made was really good. It was on a different level compared to what Ziggs made, and Ed wonders if he should also learn to cook from her. More importantly, he must focus on recovering. After all the help he's received, he can't keep looking tired forever. He might not be entirely in good condition, and his headache and slight fever are coming back, so he rests a little on the bed. Janica pops into the room, mentioning that he looks tired. He is surprised to find that she's still here, and she giggles. He cannot imagine what she is planning. Ed is really surprised to find that she is still around, and she giggles with a cute smile. She says she is not trying to do anything, as she sits beside his bed. He does not have to pretend like he's not having a hard time, since everyone gets exhausted and it comes at them both mentally and physically. She knows he is working hard and enduring a tougher schedule than anyone else. Quite a lot of people helped and comforted her when she was struggling, but what ended up helping her the most was when he had quietly stayed by her side. He is having a hard time right now, so she tells him that he is doing a great job. He tells her that she does not need to go that far, but she wants him to acknowledge that he's been struggling so that he can get some rest. He flops to the bed with a sigh, and finally agrees that he's had a hard time. He takes a few breaths, exhaustion finally taking him as he admits that it has been a really hard time, and she rests her head on the bed. The next morning, sun streams in through the window, illuminating Ed, who sits up with a sigh. He looks to his side and finds Janica sleeping with her head on the bed, drooling slightly. He tries to hold his laughter, but is soon chuckling at how ridiculous and adorable she looks. He has finally made a full recovery. His life skills have improved significantly, and he is now an intermediate level craftsman. He has also improved his magic engineering and has collected crafting formulas. He could not make much progress as he planned to in 10 days, especially in the research of magic engineering products. Advanced crafting skills greatly affect core stats and are far more versatile than general skills. The problem is that there is a clear limit to how much one can grow. Just by self-studying via reassembling magic engineering items, most magic engineering products recipes are rewards from main scenario quests. So, as someone who doesn't want to interfere with the scenario, it's hard for him to get them directly. Unfortunately, Taylor is not particularly interested in magic engineering. It is probably because even with the recipes, magic engineering doesn't make useful products right away. To craft, one needs material that may be obtained only in the later stages of the original scenario. However, his situation is different because he has someone who can procure any material from even the other side of the world. That person, of course, is Lortel, and she is relieved that he has gotten better. He mentions that he is glad she looks healthy too, but she says that is only in her looks because she is suffering from chronic fatigue. Her hair is dry, her skin is rough, and it was a struggle to get it back to normal. She seats beside him, and he asks why she came all this way when she's very busy. She says she needs to rest and tell him something. It's weird to call the merchantry after her adopted father when he has already been thrown out, so she will change the name to just Trading Company and restructure the business. She also needs someone to help her with employee management, asset management, product flow, and external affairs. Someone who will stand in as a co-executive. He already knows where she is going with this, and she smiles as she asks him to imagine. He could wake up in the morning and go to work at the trading company, and they'd only be a wall apart. He would get great benefits as a co-executive of the Alte Trading Company. She would give him shares of her personal assets too. It would be like marriage. She giggles, saying that she might be rambling, and he calls her back to reality. It is weird for her to go that far for him, and she mutters that he does not know anything. She pulls her hood over her head, stating that she knows how he feels, and that he must think that something is wrong with her. He also might not want her to make such an important decision based on the fleeting emotions of a young girl, and he probably wants to keep things professional till the end. This is all exactly what he wants, but he cannot say it. However, this is all because he has no idea how she feels. She lived in a world where hundreds of gold coins come and go, and where people get betrayed if they do not betray first. What becomes most important in that kind of world is someone who will never betray her. Someone who will stay by her side, even if all her wealth is gone. Someone who will stay even when the whole world turns its back on her. Some people have family, some have lovers, and some have friends. However, Lortel, who had seen countless wealthy and great merchants rise and fall, feared falling through betrayal. No more, no less, she asks if he can stay by her side. He stares at her in awe and tells her to at least say that without fighting to hold in laughter. She can barely stop herself and laughs that her words did not work. She thinks it's a shame because she almost had him, and he points out that her change in tone gave her away. She is human after all, bound to make mistakes, but she asks him to rate her performance and if he felt a little protective of her. Usually, when she leans into her timid and adorable side, it touches people's hearts and makes them waver. She sighs again, saying it's a shame that it didn't work this time. However, her words were not a total lie, and they sat for a moment in awkward silence. He told her that he plans to graduate from Sylvania, so he won't leave the school until graduation. Her face is dark and she says nothing at first, but he adds that if he has no other option for a job after graduation, then he'll consider her offer, and she grins wickedly. She says that she can wait until he graduates, but she is not giving him an actual choice. She might use the free pass that he gave her soon, and it was great seeing him after so long. He worries that he has done something terrible. Just thinking about the future stresses him out. Meanwhile, Lortel is also nervous. She had planned on telling him that he belonged to her, but seeing him so tired and stressed messed up her plan. If she had waited any longer, she would have shown her real face. She even brought the change from the magic engineering products payment, and it would be awkward to go back to give him the cash. She decides to just leave it in the wooden house, and strolls over there. The door is thrown open and Janica runs out of the house, saying that she should make a snack before Ed comes home. Foxy is horrified to see her acting like Ed's housewife. She demands the spirit sorcerer explain why she's coming out of his house, and she demands why Foxy is coming from the river where he was resting. It was the beginning of a new disaster as their rivalry became official. As he worked, Mug nagged about him not eating enough meat and vegetables. He also needed to make up for it at dinner and drink enough water. The little spirit says he really will die if our dude collapses again, even with his reassurance. The little spirit begs our guy to live healthily. He wants him to maintain their contract relationship for a long time. Our dude figures that he got scolded by Tarkin, which is why he's making a fuss, and apologizes to the little fire spirit. Thanks to Ziggs and Janica, he now has enough firewood, and thanks to Lortel, he can now furnish the place. The only thing on his mind are the 3 letters he received before collapsing from exhaustion. One was from Foxy, warning him to be careful of Elte. Another from Fionia, regarding Crepin's movements. And the last from the Academy. He was shocked to receive a letter from Professor Glass of all people. He sent a letter telling him that he wanted to have a private conversation after the conference. Unfortunately, Ed could not meet with him because he was unconscious. He has no idea why he's been summoned, especially as Professor Glass is the final boss of Act 2, and Act 2's final scene has already begun. He recalls most of the content of Act 2's final scene, and that Professor Glass always believed that a select few with talent would change the world. To revive Sylvania, the great sage with the most talent in history researched a spectral magic which could distort the laws of the world. to complete a spectral magic, he needed the sage-sealed grimoire, but Sylvania Academy fell for Lortel's plot and sold it. In his desperation, he stole the sage-sealed grimoire and tried to inject Sylvania's spirit into Ayla's body, who was born with a spectral magic, to usher in another progressive era. It was literally a madman's narrative. Fortunately, Taylor stepped in to save Ayla, and he broke through the traps in the secret laboratory, the spirit library, in the underground waterway. After having his entire scheme go awry, Professor Glass made an abrupt statement and fell from the top of the magic tower. Despite only dreaming of academic advancement and the discovery of talented individuals, his final words were, Ed can no longer remember his final words. In any case, the final battle of Act 2 is approaching. The Beginning of the Glass Conquest War is a book that changes the owner of the sage-sealed grimoire, the connection formula. It begins with Professor Glass kidnapping Taylor's friend, Ayla. She is frightened, and the figure before her agrees that the demon of the underground waterway is terrifying. She cries, saying that this is his fault and that she hates him. The figure responds that she is being kind of mean. It turns out that the figure is Ed, and he has found himself, once again, inside of the plot that he was avoiding. They were both kidnapped, it seems, and our dude is not happy about it, because he is now a part of the Act 2 final scene, the Glass Conquest War. It was not at all in Ed's plan to get kidnapped. Act 2, the final scene of the game, started unfolding 3 days ago. At his cozy little wood house, he had finished everything that he had not been able to do in 10 days. Not being able to train in that period felt like he wasted so much time. The Glass Conquest War was about to start, and it was such a shame that he hadn't raised his magic engineering stats yet. For magic engineering training, he also needed blueprints and materials. Suddenly, he thought of a way to drastically raise his magic engineering stats. The final scene of Act 2, the Glass Conquest War, has 4 battle stages. Among the hardest of the 4 is Phase 3, the Secret Laboratory. The boss of this stage is the Spirit Library's librarian, Riene, and she is so strong that it is hard to clear that stage without the Sword Saint's form. That is not a problem for Taylor to solve, and what he is interested in is the contents of the Spirit Library. It is full of valuable magic engineering blueprints. Just from what he remembers, there are a dozen of them. There are also 2 blueprints for legendary grade magic engineering items. However, it is dangerous to obtain, but he figures it will be fine as long as he does not go alone. In school, they learn that Adele from Class B and Ayla from Class C will be joining Class A in the next semester. There are a lot of talented people this year, so even if they join midway, there won't be any disruption to the class content, and there's no reason to worry. However, the top class only had 3 students, Ziggs, Lortel, and Lucy, so the students were rather doubtful about the large number of talented people. There even had been years where there were no students in this class, because Professor Glass was extremely strict about the selection. Ayla may not be great when it comes to combat, but they say she has a great affinity for a spectral magic. Suddenly, the Wolfman gets to his feet and asks if the criteria for the top class must be strictly determined by talent, because students who put in effort might bloom in unexpected ways as well. The professor asks if he thinks he is ruining or underestimating them by denigrating and neglecting their efforts. He does not share this sentiment and believes that the surest way to ruin someone's life is to instill premature confidence in vague talent and support them inadequately. Before entering Sylvania, Lortel had already looked into the academy faculty, and she knows all about the professor's self-righteous and almost obstinate obsession with talent. This is because of his only daughter. She was an average mage, but he had endless faith in her. It was a natural behavior as a parent. However, Muri, his daughter, took it not as his trust, but as the faith of a professor from the faculty of the magic department. In the end, that faith made her prematurely join a monster raid at a young age. Unfortunately, she did not survive the expedition, and Professor Glass completely broke down. Since then, the professor became obsessed with proven talent. During most of his tenure at Sylvania Academy, he devoted himself to researching the enigmatic spectral magic. If you know his past, you can understand what he is pursuing is not a spectral magic, but its creator. Hailed as the most talented in history, the greatest sage, Sylvania, a powerful woman with flowing silver hair. He's probably bringing Ayla into the top class for his research on a spectral magic. Suddenly, the professor calls her name, but changes his mind and tells her not to bother. His face looks more emaciated than before, and he tells her that he'll call her separately since it is not related to the lesson. She wonders if this is about the sage-sealed grimoire. He must think it's a shame that she has such an essential part of the research of a spectral magic. However, nothing he says will be of any use, because the connection ceremony for the passing over the ownership of the grimoire to her is just around the corner. The sage-sealed grimoire's connection ceremony is about to start, and all lessons are dismissed. It was a close call, but Ed had completed the plan, and the core of the operation he had developed was to follow right behind. He would follow Taylor when he barged through his course, from Phase 1 to 5 in a bid to save Ayla. While the hero charged forward, he would stop and pick up the leftover items. He made a list of must-have items, especially in Phase 3. He will grab all the magic engineering items in the Spirit Library. The items he's going for include Glock's Eye, Delheim's Hourglass, and many more. Although, the effects of these items may seem rigged because of the difficulty of farming its materials, they can only usually be crafted in the final stages of the scenario, so they won't be of much help to the hero anyway. This is why Ed shall take them instead, and while he is there, he will admire how Taylor is doing in Phase 5. After all, he is still a fanboy. Then, he will return to camp. The plan was flawless. The Glass Conquest War begins on the day of the Grimoire's connection ceremony. He told Janica that he lost something in the underground waterway and that they should go find it together. He thought she'd hate it since it was dark and narrow, but she seemed strangely enthusiastic, which made him feel sorry because he could tell she was concerned for him. With a friend great at combat, his plan was perfect. However, the assistant Professor Claire informed Ed that Professor Glass was calling for him. He had heard that the assistant professor had recently visited the cabin, and wondered if this was the issue she had come to talk about. The connection ceremony was the next day, and the professor must be very busy, so Ed wondered why he was being summoned. He did not respond to the last call since he was passed out, so he will respond to this one. He figures it must be important. However, when he shows up at the office, he is shocked to see Ayla waiting there too. She looks anxious and wonders why her reaction is a bit much when he hasn't even done anything to her. Even if it's been over 10 months, it makes sense if she still has bad blood with Ed Taylor. After all, he did shoot arrows at her that one time. More importantly, he wonders why she is here when she is supposed to be kidnapped when the Glass Conquest War starts the next day. Then, he worries in horror about why he was called. He is starting to get a horrifying guess at what is going on. He flings the papers before him and sees that they are research records, notes, and grimoires. Nothing is indicating a change in the future he knows of. The only connection to Ed Taylor found in the office is the form submitted during Claire's investigation of the Opheles Hall incident. He wonders if the assistant professor reported what she had observed about him. If so, then Professor Glass might have figured out what he did in Opheles Hall. However, that has nothing to do with the current incident. Suddenly, his eyes widen, and he whips around with a dagger drawn in defense while Ayla shrieks. The door flies open, and the professor stands before them. She races to him, fearing that our dude has a dagger. The professor's eyes widen and he casts a large magic circle. He casts a spectral magic, and uses the time prison to lock her in place. He turns the same magic on Ed, stealing the dagger away from him. However, to his absolute shock, Ed unleashes Mug and the fire spirit attacks, shocking Professor Glass. An explosion of fire stops Ed from getting snatched, and the professor comments that he was quick to catch on to what was going on. His response is also exceptionally smooth, and he asks if he scanned all his research materials in that short time. However, the professor finds it strange that just scanning a few documents would inform our guy of his intentions. He asks if there is a reason the professor is trying to restrain him, when he only needs Ayla's affinity with a spectral magic. Our guy mentions that the professor has achieved his goal, so there is no need to restrain him, and he won't tell anyone what he has seen. The professor admits that he has a goal, and he's doing it for his own sake, so he should not think too harshly of him. Ed would at least like some explanation, as this is all too much. How can he just vaguely say that he shouldn't think harshly of him? Then he thinks over the words again, and realizes it makes sense. Even if he manages to escape from this place, the professor would not leave him alone, and that would disrupt the scenario. Besides, if he is kidnapped, he will be locked up with Ayla in the secret lab, which is like getting a direct bus to Phase 3. He wonders if he should just let the professor kidnap him. The professor is curious when Ed calmly steps out. He asks if he has decided to step back, or if he's come up with a plan. Seeing that he is not fighting, the professor says it is not such a bad deal for him either and instantly kidnaps him. Papers fly everywhere as the professor walks to him. His assistant professor was suspicious of our guy before, since he was academically successful while living a life in the wilderness. It was like he lived 48 hours in a day, and he could not imagine the effort our hero exerts. He pointed out that she used to think he was a secret mastermind, but she did not expect his academic record to be so good. The professor had seen him in combat in the Crystal Ball, and he had noticed his knack for combat was extraordinary. It was, however, the approach of a weak person, to analyze the opponent thoroughly and use all available means to win. A product of effort, and not that of talent. Our dude's expression showed no hint of unease while getting kidnapped, and it reminded him of something that he had lost in the past. The daughter who had said that she would bring honor to his name through her achievements. Ed reminded him of her and her memory. The professor was so deep in thought that he did not notice Mug sneak out of our dude's clothes and zoom out through the window. The little fire spirit flew quickly and far, flying right for the little wood cabin, where Janica was cooking and waiting for Ed, thinking that he was running late. A new chapter begins from this point on, and we do a little bit of catching up as we witness a writer bring his magic travelogue of the southern continent to an end. As he traveled the world, he realized that there were many magical truths that he had yet to discover, and that his title of the Archmage felt underserved. His late master Sylvania, who passed away at a young age, remains in his memory as a beautiful woman. Looking back now, those years where he felt lacking were indeed full of ups and downs. The sorrow that gnawed at his heart on the day that he lost his master accumulated over time and now remains as an old reflection. In his long life, longing pushes its way forward. The writer is revealed as Lucy's grandfather, and he thinks of how sometimes regrets over what was lost paralyze his rationality. There are times when he has the urge to shatter the natural principles of the world and twist the truth just to see her face one more time. Unfortunately, what is lost, and those who have lost must become stronger. So, he tells Lucy to be strong, for she has become the full stop of his life, and she sits beside his deathbed with a book in her hands. He dedicates the last sentence of this book to her. She cries as she holds the magic travelogue of the southern continent. Glocked, excerpt. Present day, and Lucy is sunning on Ed's roof, thinking of how she misses her grandfather. More than anyone, Glocked acknowledged and accepted death and waited serenely. So, the girl had no choice but to let him go. She wondered if there would come a day when the pain of loss healed completely without leaving a scar. The only thing that temporarily helps her forget that longing is the satisfaction of a pouch of jerky she has. However, she is now out of jerky, so she looks around and sees Janica at the camp, receiving news from Muck. The more the spirit sorcerer listens, the more thunderous she becomes. Even Lucy gets curious about that behavior and wonders what is going on. At the Trix Hall, main conference room, the clandestine connection transfer ceremony of the Sage's grimoire. Scholars looking to sell, and merchants looking to buy gather around. Only the elite members of both groups gathered. Among them, attention was drawn to the leaders of each group. Lortel Kachellan, the acting head of the Elte Company, and Obel Frasius, the headmaster of Sylvania Academy. She is surprised to see he is around the same age and has a similar image to Kreppen Rothtailor, but compared to him, he is different to a strange degree. After the negotiations to buy the grimoire were over, the Rothtailor patriarch came to find her, and he requested that she hand over the grimoire. She was surprised at his audacious request. That was the plan from the start, so she was not planning on being discreet. However, the amount that would justify going back on the lie she had told the princess was 12,000 coins. It was a rather exorbitant price, but he accepted the deal without hesitation. Then he mentioned that her father had hired a mercenary group and was headed to Sylvania. He mentioned it out of caution because he wanted her to make sure that things did not go wrong this time. He was an unpleasant man, but it did not matter. The information he had about Elte was valuable, and she also found a place to sell the grimoire. Preparations were complete and the headmaster had to relinquish his right to connect to the scroll. Then Lortel stepped forward to receive the connection. She would have the trading profit and the purchase certificate, or rather, an all-access pass to Ed. Dark magic bubbled up around the grimoire and exploded, shocking both Obel and Foxy. Huge rock monsters arose, and Obel immediately tried to protect her and fight them off. However, she notices the grimoire. It has been taken by none other than Professor Glass, who was officiating the ceremony. He then vanishes along with it. She looks near tears to see her all-access pass to Ed disappear. Despite our guy's absence, the story progresses without a hitch. The final scene of Act 2, the Glass subjugation battle, begins. Inside Professor Glass's secret laboratory, Ayla screams. She asks why he is here and says that she hates him, shivering and crying in fear. He figures that by now, the professor must have seized the grimoire and is surprised when someone tells her to fall silent. If she keeps yelling, the monster of the underground waterway might wake up. It is Coombe, a researcher of aspectual studies, and he says that they should consider themselves lucky that the professor asked him not to use them for his experiments, because they are important people. Ed mumbles if that is so, and Coombe is unnerved by how calm he is about the situation. Anyway, he shall closely monitor the prisoners while reviewing the research materials, so they must not entertain foolish thoughts. There is nothing for more to do now. Our dude will now wait for Taylor to bring the subjugation squad and cause a ruckus. By then, the library that the hero passed through will already be devastated without any hindrance. This will give him the opportunity to sweep up all the replica magic engineering recipes from the magic books. His operation will be complete. He would not have to do anything important or get rid of anyone. The only thing bothering him now is how easy it all seems, which is pricing at his conscience a bit. There is also the fact that he has to be with Ayla, who is still making a wild fuss. She screams that she will scream if he takes any step further. She threatens to bite her tongue and that she is not bluffing. He explains that he has nothing against her. If he wanted to hurt her, then he would not let such an opportunity go to waste. Since he has seen it from Taylor's perspective, if he had to say it out loud, he feels rather positively about her. She screams that she knows his reputation, but he tells her to stop spouting nonsense and sit down. The hero will surely come if they wait. She asks if he has the right to say the hero's name, and Ed asks why would he not have the right to say his name. He apologizes for the matter with the entrance exam, but he had his own circumstances, and he helped a lot during the Glasskin incident. Even if she cannot trust him, she can trust in the hero. He will definitely come to rescue him. She cannot believe that he just apologized, and he sighs heavily. Suddenly, he hears Mug's voice. The little spirit asks if he is okay, if he is hurt or losing energy, if he can see okay, smell and hear okay as well. He shouts with tears in his eyes, asking if he has numbness in his arms or legs, any sluggishness or fatigue, if his face is turning yellow or his heart is pounding, and his pulse racing. The little spirit followed the magic reactions, and found that his spirit connection level was pretty good, but it took some time to detect him. He also apologizes profusely for not showing up sooner. Ed rubs his head fondly and asks where he has been all this time, and also congratulates him on his good job. Ayala is surprised to see a spirit, and that he can control spirits, because he used to be terrible at basic magic. He rudely says that it is none of her business since he finally has a proper partner to talk to. She believes the spirit can send a rescue request to the outside, and get the message to a staff member or a professor with strong spirit connection. However, there is no need for him to do something like that. Mug also reassures him that he has been thoroughly trained in emergency reporting systems more than anyone. It took him half a day to avoid the eyes of numerous monsters and the golem researchers to get here, so it must have been 2 days from then. However, he recalls how beautiful Janika's enraged face was, and her cold fury when she heard the news. Not only that, but Lucy was also interested in the news, and the spirit sorcerer thought to ask the Vixen merchant for help, which would be like having 1,000,000 troops on their side. Mug reassures him that one way or another, they will be rescued, so all they have to do is stay calm and wait. Meanwhile, Ed is furious because the story has now been altered too much by too many people knowing of his capture. The poor spirit cannot understand why he is making such an angry face. With anger, he grabs Mug's head and flings him with rage out of the cell. Ed then announces to researcher Coom that he has changed his mind and that he does not want to stay trapped, and that he must get out. He must leave the dungeon immediately. He is not joking. The researcher warns him that if he makes so much noise, the demon across will wake up. He is serious and says that if he does not get out of here, then they are the ones who will be in trouble. The man laughs and says that he is indeed just a student, and that he should not ramble too much. Ayla asks what is wrong so suddenly, after he told them to stay quiet, and that Taylor would come to rescue them. However, he tells her to hush. Meanwhile, Mug returns with the keys and compliments Ed's ability to quickly analyze the situation. He also asks how he knew the location of the keys. Our dude dismisses him, and is annoyed that the spirit went and did too much. Quickly, he opens the doors and sneaks out, but he shuts the door on Ayla and keeps her there. She is shocked, and he tells her to answer his questions with only a yes or no. There are all sorts of monster experiments and haunted magic tools out there. It is too dangerous for her to come out. He tells her to cooperate with them, and if they notice that he is gone, she should tell them that he escaped. She must sell him out immediately, that way they will not hurt her. He also adds that she cannot run properly with her legs given out. She tries to speak, but he tells her not to argue, and to reply with yes or no. She is hesitant at first, with fear in her eyes, but she replies with a yes. He is satisfied and tells her to stay quiet and still, then he runs away, saying that he will handle it. New twists inevitably find their way, and he can recall the raid bulletin board from the game, explaining the requirements for the final chapter boss of Act 2. He can handle the minor variables one way or another. His stats have increased enough already, so he can solve most problems by using the information advantage. However, there are bound to be variables that he cannot handle on his own. If Janica or Lortel join, then somehow he can manage. However, even game freaks and veterans who had invested hundreds of hours could not find a solution to the completely unbeatable enemy that would arise if Lucy joined the fray. When she joined, it led to a bad ending. This never happens unless someone deliberately tries to make it happen, so he did not bother with it in the game. But this is a definite bad ending triggered by specific conditions, which involve the professor meeting Lucy. No matter what happens, he has to stop her from coming here. The scene changes here once again, and we see that someone calls out to Ziggs during his daily exercise, and it's none other than Taylor. Looks like the hero has rushed over to ask for help, and he needs to rescue Ayala. Phase 1, the glass chase, has begun. The hero lost track of the professor after he escaped from Trick's Hall, so he requested help from the Wolfman, which is as the story goes in the game. He will soon lead his companions into the underground waterway to chase the professor. Our guy is familiar with the route of the scenario of the second episode's final chapter. Lortel is at the Triz Hall. Janica would come in through the underground waterway, and there is also the Spirit Library and the Monster Research Center where he is right now. Then there is the deepest part of the lab. However, retracing it in reverse will be a new experience. The Monster Research Center is a bit of a headache to deal with because Coom releases all the monsters, but it is easier in reverse because the monsters are confined at the moment. It is a relief because the encounters between Lucy and the professor are destined to lead to a bad ending. He must hurry to prevent it. The problem is that the Spirit Library is guarded. It is guarded by Riene, the librarian, and a banshee. He is familiar with her patrol pattern, so fighting her is not the issue. The problem is that she is someone who will grant the hero a valuable experience. In the later stages, there will be enemies that cannot be defeated without Taylor's swordsman form, so if he does not train well enough, the future scenarios will be harder to clear. He is supposed to progress the most during this arc, and he is to meet the ones who will help him learn essential skills which are critical, such as the revived demon of the underground waterway, and Rihanna, who will give him the most experience. So, he will just take only the necessary magical tools for the route and sneak out. He snatches the Column C Thunderclap generator and the one-way light dimmer. He will definitely come back when this is over, because it would be a waste to leave all those magical items behind. Mug finally tells him it is time to move because the Guardian is no longer paying attention. Suddenly, the room begins to shake and he worries an earthquake has started. He does not recall an event like this and leaps to his feet as the shelves come crashing down. However, to his horror, Rihanna has spotted him. He has made a terrible mistake. 30 minutes before the earthquake, the rock monsters run amok, scaring faculty members. They raise their giant fists to attack, but Lortel uses her magic and freezes them in place. She appears from behind the monster, complaining that if the deal had not been done so quietly, then Sylvania Academy's reputation would have surely been ruined. She cannot believe the professor would steal the grimoire during a gathering of the Academy's core personnel. Obel says that even if it takes time, he will take responsibility for the grimoire and get it back. He asks if it is possible for her to wait a little longer. He knows that whatever the professor is planning will not end well, and she questions him on the meaning behind his statement. He figures that since things have become like this, he will tell her the truth. There are 3 major taboos: to twist the laws of nature, to disrupt the flow of time, and to defy human destiny. The 3 major taboos are the pursuit of immortality, the resurrection of the dead, and time travel. She asks if the professor is using a spectral magic to resurrect the dead, and almost asks if the principal is crazy, but he stops her. He admits that he is curious. The legendary sage of Sylvania, whom Glass praised and admired, always said that talented individuals would advance the world. Then his daughter, Miri, passed away after he recklessly pushed her forward while trusting her questionable talents. If he has truly perfected a spectral magic for resurrecting the dead, then there is only one person the professor would want to bring back to life, and Lortel becomes speechless. Suddenly, the door flies open and someone comes to tell the principal that they have a problem. Several minutes ago, the hero was seen chasing the rogue professor, and he fled towards the underground waterway. According to testimonies, not only did he steal the grimoire, but he also kidnapped students. The members of the faculty are dismayed to learn he kidnapped Ayla. However, when Lortel hears that he also kidnapped Ed Roth-Taylor, her beef with the professor becomes personal. She is horrified to hear that he was kidnapped. There is also so much thumping and vibration. Headmaster Obel is the greatest mage of this era. He promised to bring back the Sage's grimoire if he steps in. He can easily rescue our guy. The most sensible thing to do would be to wait for that to happen, but she's already taken off running. The familiar sound and the direction of where the tremors are coming from are near the entrance to the underground waterway. Looking through her binoculars, she spots Janica and Tarkin going on a rampage. The spirit mage is crying in dismay and Lortel is speechless once more. Since she is going, Foxy decides to go as well. It is seriously a pain, but seeing the principal be so nonchalant about the grimoire, she will personally retrieve it. That is what she says, as well as telling the others to minimize the negotiation personnel and follow her. She has not officially joined the battle. A combat alchemist well recognized by the alchemy faculty, Dorothy, a top third-year student of the alchemy department, was formidable enough to challenge those among the combat faculty students. The top first and second-year students of the alchemy faculty, Elvira and Norden, often sought her guidance. However, Dorothy did not stand out during her first year, so Professor Glass, who recognized her talent, was her savior. She believed that he had a purpose behind his seemingly extreme actions, although she did not know his exact purpose. She is determined to strictly follow his request to guard the entrance to the underground waterway, but she falls to her knees, saying that he is going way too far. This is because, before her, stands Tarkin roaring in rage, with Janica on top of him. She asks with fury burning in her eyes as Dorothy trembles before her. She demands to know Ed's location. Poor Dorothy is so horrified that she froths at the mouth. Meanwhile, ignoring her, the spirit sorcerer is trying to figure out where he might be, with her other spirits in tow. She tries to remember which way to go, mumbling to herself with confusion in her eyes. It's much later that she recognizes the top student of the alchemy faculty's third years, who is still frothing at the mouth. She is worried that she scared poor Dorothy and tries to cover her up. Suddenly, Lortel appears with a few others behind her. Foxy knows that Janica, excluding Lucy, is among the top students of all years. She is an ace of Sylvania and boasts the most brilliant force. She will do anything to ensure our guy's safety. However, if she succeeds, then she would carry him away all lovey-dovey, and they would go back to the camp together. Then he would be so infatuated with her, his face blushing with love, that they would end up married, and plan to have many children. The merchant is often known to make the most rational decisions about everything in life, but when it comes to our guy, her judgment regresses. So, she tells the spirit sorcerer that he has already been rescued, and that he got hurt while being kidnapped. She also lies that he is lying in bed at the camp, asking when she will come to his side. Foxy wants to be the one to save him, so she will get rid of the spirit sorcerer first. However, Janica is immediately suspicious that Lortel would willingly share all this information with her. She is not as naive as the girl had expected. As soon as she pinned down his location, she ran to the underground waterway. She was just near the entrance, so there was no way he got rescued without her noticing. She also got here before everyone else, so who rescued him and how did they do it without her seeing them? She usually seems so thoughtless and naive, but all of that disappears, and she becomes very sharp when it comes to our guy. Foxy tries to redirect the conversation, and Janica deduces that she is using the trading company's employees to rescue Ed. They are not trained in combat and she thinks the merchant is acting too cowardly, then says dangerously. Lortel is annoyed that she is so logical all of a sudden. The spirit sorcerer already asked Lucy for help at first, but she just yawned and walked away since she never listens to others and prefers to do things her way. So, she is also alone, just like the merchant. The merchant has to agree that this is not the time to get in each other's way, especially since they have no other competitor. She asked all her employees to wait near the entrance, and no more words were needed. Janica will search the east side of the waterway, and Lortel will search the other side. The important thing is to rescue our dude who is in grave danger. So, they both run at max speed in the opposite direction, both of them determined to be the one to find him first and save him. Meanwhile, Ed is in serious trouble thanks to their ruckus because now Rihanna has spotted him, who will be the one to rescue him from this dangerous situation. Just as we wonder that question, the ceiling above cracks with lightning, and the rubble from above falls on top of the library guardian, scaring Mug, who wishes now that it was just an earthquake. The person standing on top of the fallen Rihanna, stretching her arms and sitting in the spotlight, is the lazy Lucy that we all know and love. Looks like my girl got bored sitting in the shelter, so she came to help our boy get out of this mess. And now that she has entered the scene, we already know that this is game over for everyone else involved. The scene changes in the next chapter, where the sun shines upon Principal Obel as he stands on the balcony. A man asks if he is sure that it is fine to sit back and do nothing while children fight their battles for them. However, the principal says that it is a good opportunity for them to grow, because flowers bloom where the leaves fall. The person asks if they need to be pushed this hard, since this is the greatest golden age in the history of Sylvania Academy. Across the entire history of Sylvania, this generation of students is a rare find, and each year's class has so many promising students, whom they have so many expectations of. Like stars, they are countless. However, the principal feels like this is a warning of upcoming trials that makes him believe even talented people will struggle. That is how intense it has to be. Meanwhile, Ed's hut smokes from where Lucy left it, and the smoke goes on to reveal a hole in the distant hillside. The gaping and smoking black hole leads deep into the underground waterway, past various tunnels, and opens through the ceiling on the ancient library, where the guardian now lies, defeated underneath the rubble. Ed groans, his hand on his face as he calls out to Lucy. Oblivious and unbothered, she asks if he has any jerky left. He of course does not have any with him, and she sulks in disappointment, saying that she will find a place to take a nap. The situation is a mess, and judging by the time, Janica and Lortel should have entered the underground waterway already. He needs to go there and stop them from progressing any further. Considering Taylor's growth so far, if he defeats all the bosses of the latter half, then skipping Rihanna should not completely mess with the scenario. Everything is fine, and the only real problem is the lazy mage that has entered the scenario. If she meets the professor, then the bad ending event will start. He must stop that from happening, so he places his hand on her shoulder and tells her to stay with him. She is confused and he sweats nervously, but he won't back down. He recalls Janica's words when she said that the biggest help a person can receive is having someone quietly stay by his side. Since Lucy is so strong, she makes him feel safe, so even if she does not say anything, he wants her to stay. She is still focused on the jerkies and wonders if he really has none. Annoyed, he tells her to stop talking about jerkies and to just stay with him until they get out of the underground waterway. She agrees to help him get out, however, he has some things to take off before he leaves. She sighs but agrees to help him with that too, and then he asks her for a favor. He lifts her up and carries her on her back, racing away at full speed. Now he will get out of there by going in reverse. He will get everything he needs from the library, find the two girls, and finally get out of this place. She sleepily asks if he has any jerks again, and he has to once again tell her no. Dark red eyes peek out from above the library shelves, and ravenous bats fly out at them. He uses ignition to roast them, defeating them in a fiery and roaring blaze. His elemental magic increased and so did his mono resonance. He wonders if he should call this the real thrill of mob hunting, since he is being bombed by the special exp explosion of the monsters. He silently promises the hero that he will not take too much, as he defeats various foes in his race to escape. There is a concealment spell cast somewhere around there, the magic resonance and unique insight that Professor Glass acknowledged. Unlike Janica, who specializes in spirit connection, Lortel was quickly finding the way. She acknowledges that this is not the time to exchange sweet words, and suddenly she realizes something. Right now, she genuinely wanted to help another person with pure intentions, without the bargain of getting anything back in return. She felt a glimpse of a new kind of relationship that couldn't be bought with money, and her heart swelled again. She acknowledges it as the same feeling as before. The sound she hears is from somewhere close. Her heart is beating fast once more, and her face flushes pink. Then suddenly, the wall in front of her explodes, and Ed appears. He greets her with a surprised face, while she simply stares back at him in utter confusion. He sighs in relief and tells her that he was kidnapped, while also loaded with a lot of magical items. He asks her to help him carry some of his items since they are too heavy to carry by himself. She gapes at the items, which are all advanced crafting formulas. She is stupefied to find that he was not in grave danger, but he says that he was in danger. However, he managed to escape thanks to Lucy. Lortel is horrified to see her on Ed's back, and thinks the situation is too dangerous and too cruel. The spirit sorcerer is a coward who can't ever take a chance with Ed, and Foxy has been the most proactive in making progress. They even shared a kiss. That day, she had been so short on breath that she almost set the forest on fire. She can't believe that he can act so nonchalantly with another girl in front of her. He asks her to please hold on to the crafting scrolls for him, and that if the trading company can bring the materials for that, then he will gladly pick them up. If there is anything she wants to buy, then he does not mind her buying it for cheap since she helped him so much. She yells his name, thinking that she needs to push hard and take control, but he then begs her that she is the only one she can trust. He has really crossed the line now. How could he make such a demand of her at a time like this? However, her ears flush pink and his words ring over and over in her head about how much he trusts her and how grateful he is to her. She is only able to ask gleefully if he needs a receipt, silently cursing how she has become a pushover. One of the merchants finally catches up with her and takes a moment to catch his breath in relief at finding her. They now have a huge problem. Meanwhile, in the underground waterway, Taylor and his team march forward on their quest to save Ayla. Gloomy Clebius is still hesitant and asks why they can't just leave. However, Elvira stomps on his foot and tells him that they have to do this. He is still not convinced since he never really liked either of the victims very much. The hero apologizes to him but says he still has to save his girl, and asks the Gloomy to please do him this favor. Ziggs insists that the girl they are going to save is a good person and tells Gloomy not to back out. Even the pretty blonde seer, Adele, points ahead. With a smile, she says that she feels something ahead. Her prophecies often hit the mark as if she peeks into the future. She has a feeling they are going to meet a very tough opponent up ahead. She points towards one of the dark entrances ahead, when suddenly an explosion comes from it. Janica appears with Tarkin, and they are shaking down yet another person they found in the dungeon, who is screaming about things not being planned from the very beginning. It was a simple whim, and they beg for a better chance. She still cannot remember the way and if she is to go left or right. She wonders if they went too far to the right. She pauses and turns with her spirits, waving happily at the hero and his group. Ziggs is happy to see her, but the others are terrified of her. They can never forget the learned fear that is now rising within them. Rationality when paralyzed by fear leads to misunderstandings, and they remember the time she nearly beat them up for fighting Ed. There is no guarantee that they can win against her, but they think she is their opponent and are already ready to give it their all. Meanwhile, Ziggs and Adele are confused. Meanwhile, the spirit sorcerer is confused about why they are looking at her like that, and wonders if she did something wrong. She wonders if she grilled the assistant professor too hard. The wolfman tries to calm the hero down, but Taylor is determined to fight to save his girl. Suddenly, a voice halts them, and our guy appears from the second entrance. They are all shocked to see him, since he's supposed to be kidnapped. Janica immediately rushes to him to check if he is alright. The hero goes tense at our guy's arrival, especially since he is aware of his fighting style. Only with archery and a little magic, he once single-handedly held off 3 opponents way more skilled than he was. Combining that with the power of his friends makes him unstoppable. Since the Opheles Hall incident, our dude has grown significantly. They might have been able to defeat only the spirit sorcerer, but with Ed here too, his chances of victory are 0. Ed marches towards the tense hero, his face an unreadable mask. However, he just encourages the hero to continue his quest, telling him that his girl is waiting as he walks past. It is Taylor's job to catch Glass. He will not interfere and keeps walking away with Lucy on his back. It is time for them to play their roles. The hero will handle the scenario, and our guy will take care of the variables outside, which includes Elte's surprise attack. In other words, he's going to catch Foxy's father. The issue reported by the trading company's staff was bound to blow up eventually. News came in that the mercenaries hired by the Golden King had entered Arkan Island. The mid-boss of the second episode in the original story was thoroughly defeated without even a chance to recover. The Golden King fell from power at a different time and in a different way, and because of that, he was able to escape unlike in the original story. Foxy knew that he was planning a counterattack, and it looks like he made use of the loophole with many personnel from the trading company stuck in the academy. The place is completely defenseless. They need to return immediately. Our guy got the magical engineering crafting formulas and so many magical tools this time, and they might be more useful than he imagined. However, if you were to name the best tool he has for surviving in this world, it would undoubtedly be the advantage of knowing about the future. The scenario unfolding now is the final part of episode 2, and the glass subjugation battle is nearing its end. The plan to have the storyline unfold as per the original story is still the same. If the Golden King is the mid-boss of episode 2, then he will of course attack in episode 2 just like in the original story. He will take down Elte, and he tells Ziggs that the path is almost clear. They just need to ask Ayla for the details and rescue her. In the end, Taylor has to be the one to sort out the scenario, because only after mastering all the unique skills and completing his growth can he face the big boss of the final scenario. There is a lot of stuff to sort out inside the underground waterway, and after this, the magic tower summoned by Glast will cover the sky and unleash dreadful spells. It will be really painful, and going forward, there will be many harsh trials ahead that are hard to endure with human willpower alone. However, Ed pauses after calling Taylor's name and tells him good luck. The hero does not need him to make any grand cheers, so our dude races forward with his team without looking back. They know that Elte is targeting the trading company to secure evidence that Foxy orchestrated the loss from the sale of the armor, which made him lose his position. They need to first inform the academy that the mercenaries have invaded. The spirit sorcerer asks them to pause a moment, but our dude tells her that they are in a hurry. She grits her teeth in annoyance and yells that he will get hurt again. He was just kidnapped and barely escaped, yet he is rushing in to fight the Golden King. He collapsed from overwork just a few days ago. This matter should be handled by the Elte company and not them, since it has nothing to do with him. She does not want him to get hurt anymore. He knows she is right, and that this is not really his business. However, he has to deal with a big variable like Elte to feel at ease about the game plot. Fortunately, to capture the Golden King, they need the help of both Elte, Lortel, and Janica, so he is sure that Foxy will drag them along with a good excuse. However, in a rare unpredictable situation, the Vixen agrees with the spirit sorcerer. She holds Janica's hand and admits that involving him is selfish, since he should be resting somewhere safe. They suddenly get along in matters regarding keeping him safe, and it is nice to see, but this is not the time for him to rest. So, he says that Lortel's matter is not someone else's business for him, which shocks Foxy and horrifies Janica. The spirit sorcerer demands that he explains what he means, while the Vixen blushes cutely with joy. He tells them to hurry and that they don't have time, and they once again take off in a run. He tries to think of how to explain his words, but coming up with a reason is always hard. Suddenly, the spirit sorcerer offers an out by saying that it is because of his contract with the Vixen. If she lost the trading company, then his magic engineering supplies would be disrupted too. That is why it is not someone else's problem. He pauses for a moment, but he is so desperate for an out that he immediately agrees with her. Meanwhile, Lortel is still blushing in bliss at his words. He thinks the spirit sorcerer is pretty smart, which is as expected of the top student in their year. All that aside, he glances at the complete chaos inside the tunnels, and the many fallen bodies of the rock monsters that must have guarded the entryway. The hero was so horrible without any regard for seniority in this situation, that at times like this, he was really heartless. However, he soon realizes the chaos was caused by the very guilty Janica. She cries that she did not mean to do it, but somehow things turned out like this. Lortel laughs that she is heartless, but the spirit girl insists that she is not a heartless person, and that they are just misunderstanding the situation. Anyway, they are almost at the exit now, so they will talk more outside after they have helped the academy. The carriage she came in is at the entrance with the staff. They emerge from the underground waterway to find chaos outside. The carriage has been destroyed and the bodies in the water beaten up. Foxy chuckles with a dark grimace and notes that the Golden King was faster than she expected. He stands before them with his arms crossed, a dark shadow over his face. She greets him, calling him father, and he asks who taught her how to manage documents so that there would be no evidence in the company's records even if he scours through them. There was a gap in her personnel management. All he had to do was threaten the worker, and he revealed that she was headed to this waterway. The man apologized for his betrayal and she smiled. Elte mentions that it took a long time for her to master that expression. It is a pity that the only evidence left is her confession, and it will be a waste to ruin her with torture. He waves his fingers and red light gleams in the eyes of the fallen bodies. Suddenly, with a whoosh they spring from the water and launch themselves at them. They raise sharp weapons and attempt to slice at our dude and the fox girl, but she blocks their attack with magic. She knew that he would not be alone, but he really loved to bring mercenaries into the academy, just like last time. The professor fled with the Sage's grimoire, but there is no need for comparisons with last time. This time is different. This time he has come with the continent's best mercenaries, and they far outnumber them. He tells his hired men that he only cares about Lortel's life, so the others can be cannon fodder, and he wants them finished off quickly. The mercenaries attack, firing arrows which soar through the air at them, but Janica blocks off the attack with her magic. Arrows fly close to Ed, but no arrow can touch him as the girls protect him with their magic. The spirit sorcerer uses her defense bird magic to protect him from the arrows, pushing them aside. She warns him to be careful because their movements are well coordinated. He thanks her and notices Elte's annoyance. He says that spirit sorcerers are always a hassle to handle, but this time is different, and he pulls out a suspicious-looking paper. It is the legendary grade magical engineering item, Valerius Prejudice. It suppresses the surrounding mana for 10 minutes. Despite being a single-use item, it costs dozens of gold coins per sheet to use, based on the magic restriction of the night butterfly flower reagent that Elvira used. Belarus Prejudice is its high-ranking variant. It has the drawbacks of taking time to activate and the preparations to trigger it being fatally obvious, but it is a very dangerous item. They are already at a numerical disadvantage, while their opponent has the combat power of a veteran mercenary group that he can't get through during the time needed to activate it. Most importantly, their entire party consists only of mages. He already knows their powers, so Lortel is not surprised that he came prepared. If that thing activates, they are done for. The Golden King will be held accountable by the Academy and is asked how he will deal with that. He laughs maniacally and says it is better than losing his life. A third-rate villain who should have been eliminated early in the story. Even the butterfly effect caused by a third-rate villain can shake the world significantly. Our guy knows it well because he is the same. Their opponent is a mid-boss. If he survives, he likely will be a big variable in this world. The Golden King is the villain who gets backstabbed and exits the stage. That is how it was supposed to go. He killed her parents and did whatever it took to achieve his glory and prosperity. He is an absolute villain. However, our guy does not feel the slightest bit of animosity towards him. This is because ultimately, he is persistently blocking their path so that he can survive, just like him. However, he has no intention of giving Anther the chance. He will not lie and say it's because he is ready to handle all the variables he has created. He doesn't mind if he is called selfish. This is his story, and he finally calls on Lucy on his back, telling her to wake up. She steps down from his back with a big tired yawn. She mumbles that they are so noisy, and her magic powers activate. Light floods the area, and her magic power sparks around her in waves. This is where Lucy the Slothful awakens, and only judging from this one panel alone, I'm pretty sure this Anther dude is straight up fucked. The book, Glock's Travelogue, which was written by Archmage Glock in the final years of his life, was crafted in a humble little cabin that did not quite match his fame. It was known by almost no one, except Lucy, of course, as she was his granddaughter. While she lazily slept and hovered in the air near him, he would often tell her that her natural talent was no reason to stop learning. He told her that she should always continue to learn, to be humble, and use her powers for the benefit of all. He warned her to be wary of the loneliness and bitter solitude that comes with overwhelming strength. At the blank look on her face, he pauses his lecture and finally asks her to promise him 3 things, and she listens curiously to his request. The first promise is that she will not kill anyone. The second is that she will avoid anything that might stain her hand with blood, even by accident. And the third promise is that she will live the life of a student during her time at Sylvania. Present day, dark purple lightning flashes around Lucy as she activates her powers, and she looks dangerous. It is evident that Anther prepared the best mercenaries from the fact that most present were veterans. They had survived for long in the mercenary life, and the very act of crossing the line of death multiple times already signifies strength. They had honed an instinctive sense of situational awareness, and their quick responses had become second nature. Right now, those very instincts screamed at them to halt their fight immediately. Anther screamed at them to keep fighting, but they weren't about to do that against magic that surpassed their understanding. However, most of the relatively young mercenaries do not have this survival instinct, and they rush at Lucy with their weapons raised. She shoots them a cold bored stare. Despite being a mage, she does not use magic very often. Just the flick of her finger renders maximum damage to the charging mercenary and sends the mercenary flying. She does not use magic because she can simply use the physical force generated from the overwhelming compression of mana coming from her. Simply put, she doesn't need to use magic when she can just use violence, and the eyes of her opponents widen in fear. Seeing the table turning, Anther checks how much time he's got before he can activate something. He just needs a little more time. However, she locates him and identifies him as the leader, so she will just have to take him down. However, Ed places a calming hand on her shoulder while the Merchant King falls to the ground in fear. Our main guy tries to say something to her, but turns in shock when he thinks an earthquake starts. However, it is not an earthquake and purple lightning flashes around the school. On a night when the 7 brightest stars align in a straight line and are visible, Professor Glass's advanced spectral magic distorts the laws of nature. Thus begins the descent of the magical realm, and purple magical light floods the area. The magic tower that covered the sky in the final stage of Episode 2's last battle, our main guy sees it and thinks that this is good timing. The hero and his team should have defeated the monster in the underground waterway and learned the necessary skills by now. Now that everyone who is necessary to clear the episode is together, even if it might take some time, Taylor will be able to stop Glass. The scent of the magic realm was triggered at the same time it was triggered in the original storyline, which means the scenario is progressing without any issues. Of course, since this magic is so alien and different from any other, everyone except him must be confused. This is even beyond the comprehension of Janica and Lortel, who are top students. However, to his surprise, Lucy suddenly looks into the sky and says that each of the 10 magic towers plays a role in absorbing spectral magic. She flies into the air, saying in the case, bringing back the dead might actually be possible, and Ed watched her with worry in his eyes. In the epilogue of Episode 2, the players find Miss Lazy after the incident, and when she wakes, she lazily shrugs off the incident. She was supposed to be napping on the roof of the Tricks Hall for the entire scenario. However, if she is woken early in Phase 1 before the scenario is over, and brings her into the party, then the cornered Professor Glass makes her an offer. He offers to resurrect with a spectral magic, not Sylvania, but her disciple, Archmage Glocked, the prodigy's grandfather. That is how Lucy turns into an enemy, and the entire party gets annihilated. It is an unavoidable bad ending. In the end, they only see her slowly disappearing into the underground waterway to join the professor and accomplish their dark quest. In episode 2, she was never meant to be defeated. Even the most hardcore and dedicated players who spent hundreds of hours trying to find a way came to the conclusion that there was no way to defeat her. Unexpected disruptions in the main scenario caused by variables that were not part of the original plot can still be patched up if our main guy intervenes. Sometimes, those variables can even twist the predetermined bad endings. Anther uses the moment they are distracted and activates Belarus Prejudice, thus suppressing all the mana in the vicinity for the next 10 minutes. Miss Lazy feels her mana draining, seeping away into the golden pitcher he summoned. The Merchant King then screams for his mercenaries to use the chance to fight the brats while they cannot use magic. Heeding his call, one of the mercenaries draws his sword and rushes at Ed, but he stretches out his hand and activates Windblade, to their almighty shock, and blasts the mercenary away. While our guy is also an unexpected variable in the scenario, there are entities that even he cannot stop. The Merchant King is shocked that our guy can still use his powers, and a nervous sweat drips down his face, because even the overwhelming suppression power of the legendary grade magic item, Belarus Prejudice, has its limits. Those limits happen to end and begin at the vast amount of Lucy's mana which flows like an endless sea. After all, it is impossible to drain the sea using a bucket. She says that she will clear the way, her eyes glowing menacingly as she announces that she has somewhere that she wants to go to. The Merchant King's experience is no lesser than a veteran mercenary's. The sense of survival honed by being on the edge of life and death now warned him of his certain death as he knelt before her. He knelt defeated and overwhelmed before the unstoppable might of the young prodigy. She gathers mana in her palm and lets the force of it fill her fingers as she prepares to flick them. She asks the Merchant King if he is aware that he can die, for she knows as well that Anther is no match for her. However, our main guy placed himself in front of the kneeling Golden King and reminded her it was not fine to kill others. It was odd for him to be so concerned about Anther's life. However, she hesitated because she remembered her promise. She had promised her grandfather that she would avoid anything that would stain her hands with blood. The person Ed was worried about was not the one who was going to die. He stared into her eyes with worry, concern, and determination, and her hand, which had been ready to flick, faltered. She turned and agreed to let it go. He asked where she was going, and she said that she needed to go somewhere. Conversations with Ed Rothtaylor always go like this, and he asked if she was sure that she would not regret it, which made her pause in the air. She had not expected a reply from him, and she hesitated in the air with her back turned while he waited on the ground. He stared at her in worry, and she remained deep in thought. She recalled the last chapter of her grandfather's book, What's Lost is Lost. Sadly, those who have lost must become stronger. She was told to become stronger as she hugged the book to her chest. The last sentence of that book was dedicated to her, who had brought a stop to his life. Her grandfather had died with a smile on his face, and her head stayed bowed as she recalled his death. Finally, she responded no, and then vanished before Ed's eyes. All 57 of the mercenaries boarded the boats, and it seemed everybody safely retreated. Now that they checked that, Lady Janica, who oversaw their retreat, was expected to return soon. Deciding how to handle the subdued Anther was on the back burner for now. They could hand him over to Lortel and the trading company, as she would probably take care of most of the work. After all, she herself must end her bad blood with him, and she loomed over him, glaring down at his bound figure. Our guy figured that perhaps it was because he overexerted himself while already exhausted. Now, after rushing to the highest building in Sylvania, his body felt heavy. The Trix Hall is the starting point of this episode. It is the place where Glass stole the Sage's grimoire, and where Taylor started chasing him. The Academy had taken care of the injured that resulted from the incident, so he did not expect to return there. Our guy ended up coming all the way to Trix Hall in the end. Though unintentional, his reverse journey through the stages of the episode had come together perfectly, from journeying up from the secret laboratory to the hall where it had all begun. This was where the hero started, and this is where our guy's journey will end. He opens the door to reveal Lucy watching the final showdown from afar. Among the student center buildings that Janica destroyed was the Glocked Hall. The institution that awarded him this semester's scholarship is also the Glocked Scholarship Foundation. Her grandfather had been a man who lived frugally, but he had donated most of his amassed wealth to Sylvania Academy, and his traces clearly remained all around this academy. That is why it was not difficult for him to find Lucy. He had guessed that she would be there, and he stood behind her at the place where they could look down and see the entire academy. After all, to her, this academy was her grandfather's legacy. The large glowing towers of the Aspectual Magic stand tall over the school, and Ed watches with Lucy from the rooftop of Trix Hall. In the moment they spend together, she calls his attention, and he asks what she wants. Her response is to ask if he has some beef jerky. He had already told her that he had none, and he repeated himself with a tired sigh. Conversations like this are common between them, and he asks what she is doing here. She replies that she is thinking about the old days. He looks down from the height, thinking that he would die instantly if he fell from that height. She mentions that she used to cry a lot back then because something really sad happened. But at some point, she stopped feeling so sad. He asked her why, and she said that she thought about it deeply, and the reason was surprisingly simple. It was because a lot of time had passed, and dwelling on old wounds was foolish. Even if she tried to revive her grandfather with a spectral magic, he would have to leave again someday. Besides, he had already prepared himself for death, so he might get angry and die again. Resurrecting a legendary archmage who had dedicated his life to the study of magic with such forbidden magic would be nothing but an insult. She knew from the beginning that wanting to revive him was just her being selfish. Then he speaks, catching her attention, and as she turns to him, he asks if she is okay. It is not his place to say since he tried to stop her, but he cannot help but ask. Her changing her mind about reviving her grandfather feels like it could be a whim, and if she changed her mind again, then something terrible could happen. He could not help but make sure, but even in this situation, she would probably ask for jerky again. However, she asks him to lend her his shoulder as she scoots closer to him. He wondered why she made him sit next to the railing, but it turned out that it was just so she could lean on him while the powerful magic consumed the towers. It would be hard to find someone as passionate about a spectral magic as Professor Glass in the future, so resurrection magic is also at its end. The dead are dead, and what is lost remains lost. That loss is different from person to person, but in the end, it comes to everyone equally. So, they must learn to accept that loss and cover their wounds with what they have now. Lucy understood this well, as tears filled her eyes and she cried bitterly. He could only sit silently by her side while looking up at the magic tower in the sky. The starry sky in his view seemed higher than usual and painted in sparkly colors of blue and purple. It was quite beautiful. The magic spreads through the sky as a giant golden golem raises itself from the underground, in order to protect the offering inside it, which was Ayla, the professor's chosen sacrifice. The heroes' party panted hard as they stared up in dismay and anger at the grand figure. It was an ancient weapon created by Glass with a spectral magic, powered by their captive friend. It was the final battle of Episode 2, and the magic engineering golem rose against them, controlled by Professor Glass. The Glass subjugation battle was now in its final phase as he turned his hand towards the gathered heroes and controlled the giant golem, and spurred it to attack the team of gathered heroes. Taylor's eyes widened in alarm as the golem struck as Glass commanded. The group had to rescue Ayla, who was trapped inside the golem's heart, and wreckage filled the atmosphere. Siggs caught the golem's hand and kept it suspended away from the group. He screams for the hero to go ahead, and he leaps, racing up the golem's restricted arm, his mind only on saving the girl. As Taylor charges at him, the professor cannot help but curse his nearsightedness. Taylor swings his sword at him and yells for the professor to give back his girl, like a toxic clingy ex. At some point, the professor was struck and blood sprayed from the wound he earned from the hero. The professor stopped being able to see anything without glasses. His eyes widened as he acknowledged that life as a teacher was bound to be static. His days were almost always the same, sitting at the large desk in his personal lab, reading ancient grimoires, analyzing spectral magic as the books on his desk started to pile up. He was also involved in managing academic curriculums and reviewing materials to teach students. As he kept doing that, the scenery outside the window continued to change. It was snowing when a first-year elemental studies student kept coming to his personal study. She said that she wanted to study intermediate magic and advance. It was raining when the youngest professor who caused trouble always came begging for forgiveness, flustered with tears in her eyes. The wind was blowing strongly when the highest-ranking dean out on business stopped by for his usual cup of tea. Even after he became the principal, that did not change. As the weather kept changing and people came and went, Professor Glass sat in the same place, buried in his work, thinking that the painful memories would eventually disappear as well, but they never went away. In the present day, he spits blood and his body trembles from the force of channeling the power of the grimoire to subdue the hero's attack. He manages to blast Taylor away with magic. He activates a spectral magic, small-scale time travel, and heals himself. The painful memories do not disappear. His eyes redden and the dark magic thrums to the air as he unleashes attack after attack on our brave and fearless heroes. Clebius screams in question on the nature of the attacks. The professor activates another blast of spectral magic, and the shimmering purple magic floods the towers and shakes the atmosphere. He activates multi-time prison and all the students become frozen in time. Ziggs notices on time and screams at Taylor to dodge, firing a blast of magic to push him away. The Wolfman ends up frozen as well, but Taylor manages to avoid it, and Ziggs freezes while Taylor barely escapes, falling by stabbing his sword into the magical wall of the purple tower. Professor Glass is stained with blood and his head is downcast. His vision blurs, and through the long darkness beyond his eyelids, he sees what he lost, his daughter smiling brightly at him. He remembers then that he was almost there. He can achieve his goal, but Taylor climbs up once more, standing before him and panting heavily. The professor tells the hero to give up already and to stop trying to stop him, harnessing the spectral magic around him. With all of his might, he will reverse reality. The golem charges up its firepower and blasts the powerful magic from its mouth, its eyes glowing red. However, Taylor launches at it, slicing here, there and everywhere with his mighty sword. The golem explodes in golden light, having been diced to oblivion, and Professor Glass stares in shock. His eyes widen in awe as he takes in the power thrumming through the hero and his white hair. The professor asks the hero if he is using a swordsman form. Not waiting for an answer, he activates a spectral magic, time reversal, and time rewinds, even for those who had been frozen in time, and the hero's party soon starts returning back to normal. The professor shouts that it is pointless for them to resist him so much, even if it costs him the rest of his life. He is determined to do what it takes to achieve his dream. However, he spits blood, as someone activates intermediate ice magic, ice spear, and freezes the man in place. It was Ziggs, and he shouted for Taylor to attack now. All the party members leap forward and they attack the professor and his dark magic as a team using the power of friendship. He stares at their incoming attacks and wonders if this is the end. His eyes widen and the golem throws up its hand in final defeat. There is a large and golden explosion, and golden smoke pours from every crack of the mighty golem. Its destruction makes such a loud noise. Ayla is finally freed from it and she falls into the arms of Taylor, who was waiting to catch her, and he carries her in his arms bridal style with his hair a beautiful snow white, while the golem and the professor's years of work fall to ruin behind him. After the chaos comes the smoke from the fading magic, and inside the smoke, the professor heaves a defeated sigh. He admits that the children won, and he falls back from where he stands, tipping from one of the beautiful flashy purple towers and falling from the sky. He falls a great many feet down, his body limp from defeat as he descends from the sky, his body covered in bruises and his glasses cracked, his hair flying in the wind. Professor Glass is a defeated man. As he falls, the pain of losing his daughter remains and he mumbles that he misses her. He calls her name Miri and draws closer and closer to the ground. However, before he can finish the process of falling to his death, a magic circle appears beneath him, catching him. So it is that the professor vanishes into thin air. The magic circle reappears in the woods and he is deposited there. He used a spectral magic and spatial leap, and he leaned against a tree while he caught his breath. He left the magic circle for the final escape, and he coughs out blood now in the forest with his head bowed. For some reason, he escaped way too late, and even using magic to stop the bleeding seemed pointless. His hand slid down the tree as his knees gave way and he slid further down the grass, barely keeping upright. Anyone could guess from the original storyline that he had no future, but seeing it firsthand, it is clear that he will surely die in that moment in the forest. However, when he looks up, he is surprised to see a student in the woods, way past their curfew. That student is none other than our guy Ed Rothtaylor. Despite everything, there was something that he wanted to confirm. Let's resume the story from an ago of the last point we left off, where the bright and sparkly purple magic still covered the magic towers. Before the teleportation magic got cast, Janica had sent the mercenaries outside the island. Meanwhile, Lortel confined the former merchant king in the trading company, which neutralized and eliminated all threats. Both girls promised to meet again in front of the underground waterway once everything was done, so the redhead hurries there now. She just needs to check that Ed is safe after he heads to the Trix Hall, and to her immense horror, she finds him with Lucy. Oblivious, he greets her, but Foxy can only focus on the intense grip that the little prodigy has on her crush's sleeve. All the red sirens in her head are screaming danger as she glares in frustration at the scene before her. Meanwhile, our guy is still oblivious. When he sees the top third-year student, Dorothy, and assistant Professor Claire, he guesses that the situation in the underground waterway has ended. However, to his surprise, the assistant professor has tears in her eyes and he wonders why she is crying. Suddenly, assistant Professor Claire and Dorothy see them and scream in fear. This is because Janica has appeared with her giant flaming dragon in tow, and she lands before them like a superhero. Immediately, she asks to confirm that the magic tower uses a spectral magic, because there is something that she wants to check. Lately, Janica's meeting with the spirits has turned into consistent report meetings about our dude. Those meetings were originally out of her goodwill to protect the northern forest where the spirits live. However, a few days ago, Tarkin mentioned that he detected some spectral magic coming from the magic tower in the northern forest, which warranted investigation. If the magic surrounding the towers is spectral magic, then it's easy to guess who was behind the magic felt in the forest. However, there has not been a single magic tower built in the northern forest, so she wonders what Professor Glass was doing in that region. This makes our dude think about it, and he knows that nothing much happened before in the original story. He probably does not need to interfere, however, even the fake boss, Elte, had a huge impact on the plot when left alone, so he cannot brush this event aside. If someone of Professor Glass's caliber does not exit the stage, it is unimaginable how much influence he would have in future scenarios. So, that night he goes to investigate, and as the glimmering purple towers begin to lose their magic and collapse, Ed tries to confirm it one more time. However, he ended up showing up just as Professor Glass appeared bleeding in the northern forest. The girls come with him, and while Lortel is resigned, Janica is horrified and asks the bleeding professor what he is doing there. Coughing blood, Professor Glass just says he is looking at the moon. He asks if they think that is funny, but the spirit sorcerer immediately denies the humor. He smiles in exhaustion, saying that it is strange that he finds himself quite laughable. Our guy points out that he must have known that he would fail, and he keeps laughing. The professor admits that he is right. In the end, he was bound to fail one way or another. It was reckless, but he never thought he would be subdued by a gathering of meddling students. Even if he had won, he knows the principal Obel would have taken him down. He wonders if the principal did not interfere from the start because of their years of relationship. Anyway, he does not think Obel is suited to be the principal. He tells Ed that he is a better student than he thought and that it is a shame that he discovered him too late, which was quite unlike himself. Our dude asks why the professor kidnapped him in the first place. The professor admits that our dude's talents were exceptional and he at first planned to use him for his scheme. However, he ended up fainting from overwork, so that plan failed too. When he hastily went back to get him, he had already escaped. The professor thinks of dying lonely like this as paying for his sins. It is not a bad deal compared to the sins he committed. Still, the 17 years he spent with his daughter were not lonely. They are surprised to hear that she was 17, and he admits that was her age. The years were both long and short. Then, he points out that he has known Assistant Professor Claire for a long time too, and Professor Glass is confused. He had known her for 4 years during the degree program, 5 years after obtaining a teaching certificate. If she had stayed until his retirement, that would have been almost 17 years. Before they made their way there, our dude had seen the assistant professor crying, and Professor Glass' eyes widened. Assistant Professor Claire had confessed that her Glass was the type to dislike everything at first glance. With a smile on her face, she recalled that he was the meanest and most stubborn person she had met, always passing work on to others, full of himself, dogmatic, scolding others for the slightest mistake. He is really an impossible person to like. However, he was the most scholarly scholar ever to her, and she cries bitterly in mourning. He was a person with an uncanny intuition for unnecessary things. She must have had a hunch from what Professor Glass told her. Dorothy also spoke with a trembling voice, saying that she did not know what he had been planning. But he was a precious mentor who had recognized her. However, nobody can deny that he recklessly put the lives of students at risk. Nobody, not even the principal, can deny that he went astray. Even right now, nobody is around him as he slowly reflects on his life. He says he will die lonely. Mocking his fate was his misconception as he closes his eyes, blood staining his skin and clothes. When he thinks about it, the sobbing Claire, who became an assistant professor at a young age, and even Dorothy, the top student of the alchemy department, were both considered untalented. Professor Glass kept discovering and nurturing hidden talents like them while saying that talentless people like them had no value at the same time. It was like he was saying that his daughter was also someone valuable. It had been too long to consider it a lonely death. In the end, he remained in the hearts of people. For some, he was a mentor, to others, he was a colleague. Professor Glass has severe myopia. After some point, he could not see anything without his glasses, not even himself. And as he lay silently dying, bruised and broken against that tree, he said that before he had activated Descent of the Magical Realm, he saw the Spirit Library. Our guy made a flashy exit, taking all the legendary rank crafting formulas, but there was no point in doing that. Ed asks if there was something more he could have grabbed, but Professor Glass pulls out a key. He tells our guy that it serves him right. He will have to clean it all up with his own hands now, so the mess is self-inflicted. From now on, that library belongs to him, the professor entrusts it to him. Surprised, our dude asks why he is being given this wonderful gift. However, the professor just lets go of the key that he passed to Ed with blood-stained hands. He asks why our guy is not even happy after he just received the key. He coughs and explains that there is a secret safe beneath the desk that Rihanna guarded. He tells our guy to make sure that he handles it when the academy investigation starts. Lastly, he tells Lucy to look around herself every once in a while. She is there too, listening with a darkness over her eyes as he directs his words at her. His eyes widen and he relaxes, saying she is wise. Since she is behind him, our dude wonders what sort of expression Lucy had in that moment to make the professor react like that. Unfortunately, he cannot see from his position, but her hold on his clothes tightens as Professor Glass finally slips away into the next world, his soul leaving his body. Through Glass, who closed his eyes as though he was simply falling asleep, our guy could only infer. The corpse lying peacefully under the moonlit Zelkova tree made it look as if he were in a deep sleep with happy dreams and a smile on his face. They stayed together and watched for a while. The next day, he finds himself brought before some of the school dean. He points out that he got involved in the Glaskin incident, the Opheles Hall occupation, and now the theft of the sage-sealed grimoire. He was there at every site, and he had terrible luck. Ed faces the interrogation squarely, knowing that he has done nothing wrong. After getting scolded all through the night, it is the dean's turn to scold him. He points out that Ed does not know why he was kidnapped by Professor Glass, but he escaped when he got the chance and sought help. During that process, he met up with Taylor's group. Ed confirms the story, saying it all went down the way he wrote in the report. Janica and Lortel came in a hurry to help him, and the dean points out that he left behind Ayla while he escaped alone. He points out that the girl could not move and that she did not trust him at all. So, he went alone to call for help, or so he says. The dean confesses that he is honestly rather suspicious of Ed, and looms over him menacingly. Even if the story makes sense, the repeated coincidences are way too many to excuse. From the dean's perspective, it all looks very suspicious. He points out that Ed acts like he knows nothing, but he gets the feeling that he knows a lot. Our guy faces the flames of the dean and nonchalantly thanks him for such a flattering evaluation. The same goes for his sly behavior. However, because of the Awfully's Hall incident and the recent event, our dude is a student who has suffered due to the Academy's negligence. Ed stares at the report and realizes with surprise that it is not the report that he wrote. The report the dean was looking at was his report card. The dean acknowledges that he has worked hard. He will acknowledge Ed's hard work, and the Academy wants to reward him, much to his surprise. He leaves the dean's office with a skip in his step, and someone calls out to him. It is Janica, and he apologizes for making her worry. He asks her if she got hurt since it looked like she fought and he was worried. However, she assures him that he has no reason to worry and that she is fine. Then she gets a message from her spirit bird tweeting on her shoulder. Then Janica doubles back and quickly says that she might not be completely unscathed. She asks if she should say that her body feels a bit sore and that she got hurt a bit while saving him. He is surprised to hear that she got hurt and he asks of the specific place she got hurt. Throwing it back, Janica groans that her back aches, perhaps she sprained it. He then mentions that he realized something from this incident.